Chapter 406. Hearing old monster Xuanyuan's call, there were 4 experts from Guangcheng Celestial Sect nearby. 2 of them were old men. One was short and fat with white eyebrows, and the other was tall and skinny with white hair. The other 2 were tall and black-faced middle-aged man, and the other was a young man like old monster Xuanyuan. In the world of cultivation, the most untrustworthy thing was one's appearance. Some of the experts who were successful in cultivation were white-haired old men, but there were also those who could stay young forever, looking like young boys and girls. A young man might be an old monster. After hearing old monster Xuanyuan's order, the 4 people immediately obeyed and flew toward the forest where Ji Yufei was hiding on their swords. At this time, Ji Yufei's life essence was surging. He couldn't hide his breath even if he wanted to, so he couldn't avoid the senses of those peerless experts. The peerless experts of the emptiness realm had a strong spiritual sense. They could sense the movement within 100 miles with just a thought. Under their senses, the vigorous life essence on Ji Yufei's body was as eye-catching as a lamp in the dark night. Swish, 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 swish. 4 streaks of sword light instantly appeared above the tree where Ji Yufei was. Ji Yufei sat under the tree motionlessly. His body was trembling slightly, and a huge life essence was still surging out of his abdomen. The life essence contained in the leaf of the longevity grass was still not completely refined. I was too careless. Ji Yufei was secretly anxious. He regretted eating the leaf of the longevity grass. The extremely huge life essence in his body almost made his body explode. If he wasn't a warrior whose body was comparable to a spiritual treasure, but an ordinary transcending mortality cultivator, he might really break his tendons and bones because of the surging life essence in his body. Even so, Ji Yufei felt that his body was swelling like a ball. The life essence in his body couldn't leak out. The vast sword chi spread down from the sky. Then, the sword lights flashed in the forest, and 4 brilliant sword lights broke through the sky. Then, the 4 sword lights disappeared, and 4 figures appeared in the sword lights. The short and fat old man with white eyebrows was shocked when he saw Ji Yufei's appearance. The life essence in Ji Yufei's body was too vigorous. Could he have eaten the longevity grass? Another tall and thin old man with white hair seemed to have thought of something and said with uncertainty. Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. However, they did not know what the medicinal effect of the longevity grass was. Nevertheless, when they saw Ji Yufei's tightly closed eyes, drenched in sweat, and a trace of pain on his face, they could vaguely guess that Ji Yufei had consumed some kind of spiritual herb. Otherwise, the life aura on his body would not be so vigorous. Qing Yangzi, take him away, the short and fat old man with white eyebrows said to the dark-skinned young man. This wasn't a good place. It was full of uncertainties. Old monster Xuanyuan was still fighting with the great demon Chu Ji, and the others could find their way here. Yes, Martial Uncle. The dark-skinned young man, Qing Yangzi, immediately accepted the order and walked forward, reaching out to grab Ji Yufei's shoulder. However, when Qing Yangzi's fair and slender palm, which seemed to be covered in a layer of white light, landed on Ji Yufei's shoulder, Qing Yangzi's expression changed immediately. Bang! With a loud sound, Qing Yangzi's palm on Ji Yufei's shoulder bounced off. Qing Yangzi felt a sudden burst of power from Ji Yufei's shoulder. Not only did it knock his palm away, but it also went along his palm and hit his chest. If he was hit by that power, even if Qing Yangzi had the powerful cultivation of the void controlling realm, his corporeal body would still suffer some injuries. A sword cultivator's entire life's energy and abilities were all focused on the sword in their hands. Their corporeal body couldn't even be compared to Ji Yufei's. This was also the reason why cultivators and divine arts practitioners didn't dare to let real martial artists get close to them. Once a martial artist got close to them, it would be extremely dangerous. Qing Yangzi's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly retreated, trying to neutralize the power that came crashing towards him. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Qing Yangzi actually retreated more than 10 feet before he could neutralize the huge power that came crashing towards his chest. What's going on? The short and fat old man with white eyebrows frowned and asked. One must know that Qing Yangzi had the cultivation of the void controlling realm, but he was actually repelled by a transcending mortality realm cultivator. This was simply something that no one would believe even if they were to say it out. Everyone was incomparably shocked. It was truly unbelievable that a transcending mortality realm cultivator could repel a peerless void-controlling realm expert. Me. I'll do it. The old man patted his magical treasure pouch. A ray of light immediately rushed out from the magical treasure pouch. Within the ray of light, there was a white jade bottle. Withdraw. The old man pinched his spiritual art and pointed at the jade bottle. The jade bottle immediately enlarged, and at the same time, a huge suction force gushed out from the mouth of the bottle, sweeping towards Jiu Fei. In the distance, there were waves of terrifying energy waves that were like the raging tides of the sea. Two powerful auras were vast and mighty between heaven and earth. Loud noises came continuously, shaking the mountains. Old monster Shenyuan and the great demon Chu Ji were still fighting, and it seemed to have reached the climax. The short and fat old man didn't want to hesitate. He immediately took out his magical treasure, wanting to keep Jiu Fei into the jade bottle. The jade bottle turned into the size of a small mountain. The mouth of the bottle was like a bottomless black hole. The huge suction force instantly enveloped Jiu Fei. Returning bottle? The tall and thin old man and the other two were shocked. They were from the same sect as the short and fat old man, so they naturally knew about this magical treasure. Don't take his life, the tall and thin old man hurriedly said. However, he did not stop the short and fat old man, allowing him to do as he pleased. Got it. The short and fat old man replied. The jade bottle that was the size of a small mountain emitted rays of light, as if it was surrounded by strands of immortal qi. On the surface of the crystal-clear jade bottle, mysterious runes vaguely appeared. I didn't expect Martial Uncle to have refined this ancient artifact. The dark-skinned young man, Qing Yangzi, looked at the white jade bottle in the sky and said in surprise. An ancient aura was emitted from the talisman, which emitted a shocking energy ripple. The mouth of the bottle emitted a terrifying suction force, which formed a whirlwind that dragged Jiu Fei's body. Although Jiu Fei's eyes were tightly shut and he was circulating his mysterious art with all his might in an attempt to refine the boundless life essence in his body as soon as possible, he was still aware of everything that was happening in the outside world. Jiu Fei could feel a strong force binding him tightly, trying to pull him up. At this moment, he could not move at all and was extremely anxious. However, just as Jiu Fei was about to be pulled into the jade bottle, a crisp sword chime suddenly came from Jiu Fei's body. The sword chime was like the cry of a crane. Although it was not loud, it echoed in the forest. Everyone in the forest could feel a vague fluctuation of sword qi. Jiu Fei only felt that the life essence of the mystical weapon in his body was vibrating, as if his blood and qi were burning. His flesh and blood emitted waves of sword qi, which actually resisted the suction force of the jade bottle. The four peerless experts were all famous figures of the Guangqing celestial sect. Their sword Dao cultivation was unfathomable. When they felt the vague sword qi coming from Jiu Fei's body, their expressions immediately changed. That sword qi actually caused the Dao nascent souls in their zifu to tremble. The cultivation method of the Guangqing celestial sect was the Dao of sword immortals, and the Dao nascent souls formed were also different. That was the sword nascent soul, a sword nascent soul formed by endless sword essence. The dantian of the zifu was filled with endless sword essence. That sword essence could be turned into a sword, and it could also be spread around the body. At this level, their body was the sword. The natal flying sword had already been completely melted into the body, becoming a part of the sword essence in the body. Feeling the sword qi on Jiu Fei's body, the sword essence in the body of Qing Yangzi and the others were actually affected. The Zifu nascent souls seemed to be a little afraid of the aura on Jiu Fei's body. How? How could this be? The short and fat old man with white eyebrows swayed. The sword essence in his body actually showed signs of losing control, and the circulation of his magic power suddenly stopped. The short and fat old man immediately lost control of the jade bottle in the sky, which had become the size of a small mountain. The jade bottle quickly shrank, turning into an ancient jade bottle that was half a foot long and had no luster. The old man seemed to be very nervous about the jade bottle. He hurriedly reached out to catch the jade bottle that fell from the sky, and then carefully put it into his magic treasure bag. At this time, the obscure sword chi on Ji Yufei's body also gradually retreated, and then completely hid into his body. There was no longer a trace of sword chi coming out. The mysterious sword was a treasure-level divine weapon. There was no doubt about it. Even if it was a broken sword with only the hilt left, it still had unfathomable power. His body. Qing Yangzi's expression changed several times. The gaze that he looked at Ji Yufei gradually became hot, as if he was looking at a treasure. You sensed it too. The black-faced man who had been silent all this time also spoke up. The extremely vigorous life essence energy surged within Ji Yufei's body, tempering his body. He could even clearly feel that his body was collapsing, and he could feel that his flesh and blood were being reborn. His sparkling and translucent bones were covered in cracks. Endless pain, along with his sensitive nerves, was transmitted to his brain. His flesh, blood, tendons, and bones were cracking, but at the same time, they were being reborn. Only after destruction could a treasure body reach grand completion. This was the true meaning of destruction and reconstruction. Cracks began to appear on Ji Yufei's skin, as if an exquisite porcelain had been shattered. Within the cracks, one could see the bright red flesh and blood. One could even see the blood flowing. However, no blood essence seeped out from the cracks. This. Chapter 407. Ji Yufei's situation seemed a little terrifying, a little creepy. His skin was cracking, but there was no blood flowing out. His essence blood seemed to be tightly bound within his flesh. His skin was as translucent as jade, flowing with a faint luster. Every inch of his skin, every inch of his flesh, was surging with life essence. After consuming the longevity grass leaf, Ji Yufei began his first real physical transformation. This physical transformation could be said to be incomparably important, but it had come so suddenly that Ji Yufei did not know what to do. He could only desperately refine the vast sea of life essence in his body, fusing it into his flesh, tendons, and bones. He could no longer care so much. Life essence surged, and his entire body's yuan qi was vast. The vast life essence contained in the longevity grass leaf seemed to ignite his flesh, tendons, and even his yuan qi. His entire body, inside and out, surged with life essence that was like a divine green flame. The yuan qi that Ji Yufei had refined into his flesh, tendons, and bones had gradually reached a limit that he could bear. If his physical body did not undergo a transformation to become even stronger, Ji Yufei would be in danger of his body exploding from the surging yuan qi. Even if his body did not explode, his tendons, and flesh would suffer unimaginable damage, and he would no longer be able to cultivate the great Tao. Catcher. There was suddenly a chilling bone-cracking sound coming from Ji Yufei's body. It was as if there was an invisible hand inside his body that was breaking and crushing his bones one by one. What's going on? The white-browed, pudgy old man said in shock. What was happening to Ji Yufei had already exceeded the scope of his imagination. No one would train themselves to death while cultivating. However, Ji Yufei's physical body seemed to be collapsing. For martial cultivators, this was equivalent to destroying one's own Tao foundation. No one would do this unless they were crazy. However, the four peerless experts of the Guangqing Immortal sect had already noticed that Ji Yufei was not a cultivator. Qing Yangzi and the others had never seen or heard of the martial art he was practicing. Is he going to die? The black-faced man's face turned even darker. If Ji Yufei died, it would be a huge matter that would shake the three great Tao sects. Humph. This kid is very strange. His vitality is so vigorous that it's simply unimaginable. Even if he wants to die, I'm afraid he won't be able to. The tall and skinny old man said with a grave expression. The people of the Supreme Mystery Sect and the Green Spirit Peak are all freaks, they're all lunatics. The dark-skinned youth, Qing Yangzi, looked at Ji Yufei, who was shrouded in a dark green aura. We'd better find a way to get him out of here. If the people of the Supreme Mystery Sect and the Shongqing sect find out that he's here, we'll be in trouble, the white-browed, pudgy old man said in a low voice. In the distance, there was an earth-shaking roar. The demonic aura covered the sky, and the golden sword light was thousands of feet wide. The first son of the demon monarch, Chu Ji, was ferocious. He was fighting against the Guangqing immortal sect's Shen Yuan, and he did not seem to be at a disadvantage. It was hard to imagine that Chu Ji's cultivation had recovered so quickly. That day, Dan Chengzi, who had just broken through to the Yushu realm, was able to fight him for 300 rounds without being at a disadvantage. But now, this demon could actually fight someone at the peak of the 9th level of the Yushu realm. It was really shocking. It should be known that a peerless expert who had just broken through to the Yushu realm was not at the same level as those old monsters who were at the 9th level of the Yushu realm. Chu Ji, don't think that I won't dare to kill you. High up in the sky, the golden sword light, thousands of feet long, swept away the heavy demonic aura, and went for the sky demon form. The void trembled under the sword light. Wherever the sword light passed, ripples that could be seen with the naked eye spread out. If the power of the golden light was to be a level higher, it might really be able to cut the void. Kill me if you can, haha. The huge demon shadow laughed to the sky, but the voice came from the demon shadow's abdomen, where Chu Ji's real body was. The sky demon form was just a form, condensed by endless demonic aura. It was faint and illusory, without real flesh and blood. It could also be said that it was a clone formed by Chu Ji's primordial spirit. However, even if it was a shadow, it was related to Chu Ji's primordial spirit. It could also use some kind of magical power of the primordial spirit demon infant, and it had a lot of advantages when fighting against Shen Yuan. Boom! The huge demon fist directly hit the opposite golden sword light. The demonic aura was turbulent, directly shaking the heaven and earth, and violently collided with the golden sword light. The sword light was blown away, and the huge demon shadow also flew back. Without the sky demon saber, Chu Ji could only use the secret skill of the primordial spirit to fight against the Guangqing celestial sword, which was said to be able to break all kinds of magical power and divine sense. Chu Ji, you can go to hell now, Shen Yuan shouted. Then, endless golden sword light appeared between the heaven and earth, drawing the power of heaven and earth, and quickly flew in all directions. At this moment, the cold sword chi rushed up, and an unprecedentedly powerful wave of sword essence surged out from the body of the white-haired young man. Xuanyuan's whole body emitted brilliant golden light, as if he had turned into a heavenly sword, showing the momentum of an expert who looked down on the world. Sword formation? Chu Ji cried out in surprise. He found that the thousands of golden sword light, like golden divine swords, broke the endless demonic aura, and surrounded his sky demon form. The thousands of golden sword light formed a mysterious sword formation. Shen Yuan stood in the middle of the formation, and the endless essence of heaven and earth gathered from all directions the moment the sword formation was formed. A terrible force was gathering, which was so powerful that even Chu Ji's face changed color. The Guangqing celestial sword is indeed extraordinary. Forgive me for not keeping you company. The huge demon shadow quickly shrank and disappeared into Chu Ji's body. He wanted to rush out of the sword formation, because Shen Yuan was very fierce. However, he was shocked to find that there seemed to be an invisible wall blocking him from all directions. The sword formation exuded an unfathomable force that trapped him in the eye of the sword formation. This time, Chu Ji was really a bit anxious. He was really too rash. Old monsters at the peak of the void controlling realm were not easy to deal with, especially this Shen Yuan from the Guangqing celestial sect. With a sword in hand, even a demigod would be frightened, and he did not have the sky demon saber. Chu Ji, today will be the anniversary of your death next year. Shen Yuan old monster began to operate the sword formation, and thousands of golden sword light emitted endless sword aura, which obliterated the center of the formation. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth from all directions was constantly sucked in by the sword formation, and the power of the sword formation increased rapidly. The terrifying sword aura surged towards Chu Ji, who was in the center of the formation, like a terrible storm. The dense demonic aura around Chu Ji was immediately dispersed, and his figure appeared. At this time, there were a few powerful auras coming in this direction. Obviously, some experts were attracted by the fight here. Because of the appearance of the deity palace and the true demons, the northern region suddenly became the most eye-catching region on the soaring dragon continent. Countless experts had entered the northern region. Even the demons of the northern devil region appeared in the northern region. It was obvious that the northern region was an extremely complicated and chaotic region. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The escaping light streaked across the sky like a meteor, passing over the mountains, and soon came close. When they saw the sword formation that was formed by thousands of golden sword light, they were all shocked. The people who came retracted the escaping light and appeared in the void. They were 3 sage-like cultivators who were standing on magic tools. Sword formation? Is that the expert from the Guangcheng celestial sect here? The demon trapped in the sword formation seems to be the first son of the demon lord, Chu Ji. The 3 cultivators were unwilling to go forward. The terrifying sword aura in front of them had already made them shiver, as if they were being pointed at by countless divine weapons, and all the pores on their bodies were open. Ji Fei is here. Suddenly, an angry roar came from the sword formation and spread far and wide. That voice reverberated in the mountains for a long time. Ji Fei is here, Ji Fei is here, the mountains echoed, and the voice traveled hundreds of miles. Seeing that he could not break out of the sword formation, Chu Ji shouted with his sound technique and spread the news that Ji Fei was here. Chu Ji, you deserve to die. Seeing this, old monster Shenyuan was furious and could no longer keep calm. He waved his hands again and again. Rumble. The speed of the sword formation suddenly sped up, as if thousands of mountains were moving at the same time. This part of the world was shaken by the power of the sword formation. In the eye of the formation, sword light shot out, and pitch-black spatial cracks appeared in the void. The power of the sword formation was so great that it could cut the void. Chu Ji was suddenly in danger. Shenyuan wanted to use the power of the sword formation to kill Chu Ji as soon as possible, but for some reason, he sensed that his disciples and grand disciples hadn't taken Chu Ji away from the distant forest. Getting Ji Fei was equivalent to getting 3 life-prolonging grass. However, Chu Ji's shout made old monster Xuanyuan's plan to take Ji Fei away secretly fail. This made old monster Shenyuan mad. He repeatedly stimulated the sword spirit in his body and operated the sword formation. Thousands of golden sword light hovered and danced in the void. This part of the world seemed to be covered by a golden glow. Even the sun in the sky lost its brilliance at this moment. Ji Fei? Who is Ji Fei? Where is Ji Fei? The 3 peerless experts who were watching the battle in the distant sky showed 3 different expressions when they heard Chu Ji's shout. Some were confused, some were shocked, and some were overjoyed. Chapter 408. Chu Ji seemed to know the secrets of the 3 great Daoist sects. He knew that the old monsters of the 3 great Daoist sects were looking for a disciple called Ji Fei, and this Ji Fei was the brat who had fought with him on the demon dragon ship in the Fallen God Sea. That day, Chu Ji had gone to the Divine Demon Island to steal the blood of the Divine Demon from the descendants of the Divine Demon. Although he had successfully infiltrated the Divine Demon Forbidden Land and stolen the blood, he had been discovered by the descendants of the Divine Demon clan and chased after him. The descendants of the Divine Demon clan on the Divine Demon Island were said to have an ancestor. They were neither gods nor demons, but they were both gods and demons at the same time. The Divine Demon clan possessed both divinity and demonic nature. They were existences that existed between gods and demons, possessing the power of both. However, they were not truly gods or demons. For millions of years, no demonic faction had dared to extend their hands to the Divine Demon Island in the Fallen God Sea. This was because there were many unknown secrets on the island. There was a powerful and unfathomable force guarding the island. Legend had it that the souls of the Divine Demon clan were sleeping on the island. One day, the ancient Divine Demon clan would return to the human world. Chu Ji had been bold enough to steal the divine blood of the descendants of the Divine Demon clan. He had poked a hornet's nest and was chased to the sea. In the end, the descendants of the Divine Demon clan summoned their ancestral souls. Not only did they take back the divine blood, but they also destroyed Chu Ji's Dantian and devoured his Yuan divinity demon infant. If he hadn't cultivated a second primordial spirit and escaped, his soul would have long been destroyed. Chu Ji had consumed the blood of the divine demon clan. Although the blood in his body had been extracted by the ancestral souls of the descendants of the divine demon clan, his flesh and bones were still stained with a trace of the blood. A trace of the divine demon blood had allowed Chu Ji to cultivate an incomparably powerful demonic body. Seeing that he could fight with the Guangqing immortal sect's old monster Shen Yuan, it was very likely that he had already condensed a Yuan divinity demon infant. The Dao Foundation had been destroyed, but he could rebuild it. The secret technique of the Six Paths Demon Palace was truly unimaginable. But now, Chu Ji was trapped in the eye of the sword formation by old monster Shen Yuan, and was in great danger. Endless spiritual essence of heaven and earth gathered, and the power of the sword formation continued to increase. Rays of golden sword light, like divine swords, slashed at Chu Ji, who was in the eye of the array. Wherever the sword light passed, the void collapsed and terrifying spatial cracks appeared. Tens of thousands of golden sword lights were densely packed together, enveloping the heaven and earth. Sword chi soared into the sky, causing the heaven and earth to lose their color. This was the terror of a sword cultivator at the 9th heavenly layer of the imperial void. The sword formation sealed off all directions, and endless sword chi surged toward the formation eye. It was a destructive storm formed by endless sword light, and it was so terrifying that even the void seemed to be shattered. Chu Ji felt the threat of death. Old monster Shen Yuan was more terrifying than he had imagined. He actually had the ability to kill him. However, Chu Ji knew it too late. In all directions, up, down, left, and right, all he could see was sword chi and sword light. He felt as if he was standing in an ocean of swords, and it seemed as if he would be completely crushed by the waves at any moment. Countless terrifying sword lights that pierced and slashed at him were all either dodged or blocked by him. However, Chu Ji knew very well that this situation could not last long. The power of the sword formation was getting stronger and stronger, and he was already feeling extremely strained. Roar! Ji Fei is here. Chu Ji could not care so much at this time. He used his sound technique and transmitted his voice far away. He wanted to distract old monster Shen Yuan, and then the sword formation would reveal a flaw so that he could escape from the sword formation. Chu Ji had captured a Taoist disciple in the northern lands, and from him, he learned that the reason why the three great Taoist sects had mobilized so many people to enter the northern lands was because of Ji Fei. As for Ji Fei, he had the immortal herb that even those old monsters coveted, the longevity grass. Others did not know what the longevity grass was, but it did not mean that Chu Ji did not know. According to the ancient records, the longevity grass was a kind of heaven and earth spirit that defied the natural order. Birth, old age, sickness, and death were predetermined by the heavens, but the longevity grass could increase the lifespan of a person who was at the end of his lifespan by another 200 years. It could be said that it defied the heavens and broke the laws of heaven and earth. Chu Ji, go to hell. Old monster Shen Yuan did not want others to know that he had found Ji Fei, so Chu Ji's shout made him mad. He repeatedly urged the sword energy in his body to control the sword formation and kill Chu Ji, who was trapped in the eye of the formation. Old monster Xuanyuan's lifespan was coming to an end, and the longevity grass was his only hope. However, Chu Ji's demonic arts had reached the peak of perfection, and his body had been tempered by the blood of fiend gods and demons, making him even more powerful. Shen Yuan couldn't kill Chu Ji in such a short time. Ha ha! Chu Ji laughed. He patted his magic treasure pouch, and a black light suddenly flew out. A powerful wave of demonic energy immediately spread out. Within the black light, there was a small black bell. As soon as the bell flew out of the magic treasure pouch, it quickly enlarged and enveloped Chu Ji. Swoosh! 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 Countless golden sword lights tore the void and slashed at Chu Ji. Clang! 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 The demonic bell blocked the golden sword lights that came from all directions. The terrifying sword chi that could split the void actually couldn't leave a mark on the demonic bell. It was obvious that the demonic bell was extraordinary. It was definitely a great treasure. Damn it! Old monster Shen Yuan stood in the middle of the sword formation on the golden sword lights. He couldn't help but frown when he saw this. He continuously exerted his power and used the power of the sword formation to attract the essence of heaven and earth. The essence of heaven and earth gathered from all directions and merged into the sword formation to increase its power. The huge sword formation covered the sky. Countless sword lights danced and circled in the sky, forming a mysterious formation that sealed off a part of the world. The center of the formation became a dangerous place, a land of death. Countless sword lights slashed at the eye of the formation, and the vast sound of the bell did not stop for a moment. However, even though the power of the sword formation was increasing, it was still difficult to break the demonic bell that enveloped Chu-Ji in a short period of time. In the forest, the four peerless masters of the Guangqing celestial sect also encountered a problem. Even an ancient treasure like the returning bottle couldn't take Ji Yufei away. How could they take Ji Yufei away? Chu-Ji's voice was so close to them that it was like a roar in their ears. They knew that people who heard the voice would definitely gather here immediately. If they didn't take Ji Yufei away, it would be difficult to hide it from the masters of the Taishan sect and the Shongqing sect. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Two streaks of light flew over from afar. The sound of the streaks of light breaking through the air could already be heard. The short, fat old man with white eyebrows was so anxious that his forehead was full of sweat. As for the dark-skinned young man, Qing Yangzi, he was rubbing his hands anxiously. The tall, skinny old man and the dark-skinned man were staring at Ji Yufei, who was sitting under the tree with his body surging with vitality. Catcher, catcher, catcher. Within Ji Yufei's body, there was a bone-chilling sound of bones breaking. His head, face, limbs, and the skin that was exposed outside his clothes were constantly cracking and then healing. This situation seemed to be a never-ending cycle. Traces of yellow and black liquid with a faint smell of blood began to seep out of Ji Yufei's pores. He was refining his body. His flesh and bones were breaking, but at the same time, they were being reborn. During this process, the impurities in his body were being refined. Ji Yufei's body was transforming in the direction of a flawless treasure body. This process brought endless pain. This kind of pain, even the pain of death by 1,000 cuts, was not even a fraction of it. His entire body was breaking apart, but under the effect of the vast vitality, it was being reborn and reformed. This kind of pain that could neither die nor be reborn was even more terrifying than falling into the 18th level of hell. Ji Yufei could no longer think. Right now, he only felt one thing, and that was pain. The never-ending pain. Moreover, it wasn't just a certain part of his body that was hurting, but every inch of his skin and every bone in his body was hurting. The pain was so painful that he almost had a mental breakdown. It was so painful that he simply wanted to die. However, he still kept his eyes closed and his teeth tightly clenched. He didn't even know that his teeth had been clenched so tightly that a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. The endless pain made his 5 senses useless. He didn't know what was happening in the outside world. At this moment, he didn't want to know anything. He just wanted the transformation of his body to end as soon as possible. He wanted to cry out. He wanted to vent. He wanted to find someone to fight with his life. He even wanted to kill someone. He wanted to use all kinds of methods to reduce the pain in his body. However, he endured it all. Ji Yufei knew that he was facing a huge opportunity. He faintly felt that as long as he could endure it, he would welcome a new life. However, the 4 experts of the Guangqing immortal sect in the forest were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. The situation was already very urgent. The 2 flowing lights in the distance were about to arrive in the blink of an eye. The short and fat old man with white eyebrows suddenly walked forward with a determined expression. Then, he waved his right sleeve and opened it wide. A strong suction force came from the sleeve and rolled towards Ji Yufei, who was sitting under the big tree. A shocking scene appeared. Ji Yufei's body, which was as steady as a rock, was actually pulled up by the suction force from the old man's sleeve. Then, he was sucked into the big sleeve of the old man. When the other 3 saw this, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. How could it be so easy? They couldn't believe it. Just a moment ago, even the ancient treasure, the returning bottle, couldn't suck Ji Yufei into the bottle. How could an ordinary heaven and earth sleeve technique suck Jiyu Fei into the sleeve? Qing Yangzi and the black-faced burly man were not the only ones who were confused. Even the short and fat old man who had kept Jiyu Fei in his sleeve was baffled. "Let's go," the short and fat old man lightly shouted. Then, his whole body emitted an extremely sharp sword light. He soared into the sky and flew towards the south. Chapter 409. Swoosh, swoosh. 2 streaks of light flew over from afar and arrived above the forest. 3 cultivators standing on magic tools were inside the streaks of light. "Where do you think you're going?" One of the cultivators took out a red gourd and slapped the bottom of the gourd. A nearly transparent flame immediately shot out from the gourd and flew toward Qing Yangzi and the others like a rocket. "It's the true fire of destruction. You guys go first." One of the streaks of light stopped, and a black-faced burly man appeared in the void. "Sword out!" The black-faced burly man yelled, and a grey sword ray immediately shot out from his body. "Sword shield." The black-faced burly man formed a sword seal with his hand, and the grey sword ray immediately shone brightly, emitting an extremely sharp fluctuation of sword chi. Hum! The grey sword ray spun in front of the black-faced burly man, and the sword chi formed a light shield that completely sealed off the space in front of the black-faced burly man. The nearly transparent flame that shot out was immediately blocked by the vast and mighty sword chi. The sword chi was sharp, but it gave off a heavy feeling. The true fire of destruction collided with the grey sword shield and instantly exploded, covering a radius of 100 zhong. Wisps of nearly colorless flame pounced on the sword shield. Sizzle! The almost colorless flame seemed to be all-pervasive and possessed great power. Its temperature did not seem to be high, but in an instant, it managed to burn away most of the blurry sword chi. "Earth elemental sword chi?" The cultivator who took out the red gourd exclaimed. Then, the true fire of destruction quickly retreated and returned to the red gourd. "Dongfang Haotian, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to provoke a conflict between our 2 clans?" The black-faced burly man retracted his sword ray and stood in the air as he spoke sternly. "Haha. Brother Li, you're being too serious. How could my Dongfang clan become enemies with your Guangqing celestial sect?" Dongfang Haotian was dressed in a light blue robe, his sleeves fluttering in the wind. His 3-foot-long black beard hung down to his chest. He was a middle-aged cultivator with the demeanor of an immortal. Even though he was a cultivator, and his body was emanating powerful waves of magic power, he was not a Daoist priest. He was not wearing a Daoist robe, and he did not have a Daoist crown on his head. Dongfang Haotian's long hair was tied behind his head with a light blue ribbon, giving him an elegant and concise look. "Humph. Then why did you attack? Moreover, you used the Nirvana True Fire right from the start," the black-faced man said sternly. A pair of eyes that were as bright as stars shot out 2 rays of sword-like light as he stared at the other party's face. The other cultivator who chased after Dongfang Haotian drove his magic tool, wanting to go around the black-faced man and chase after the 3 streaks of light. "Fellow Daoist, please wait." Although the dark-faced man had intercepted Dongfang Haotian, he didn't dare neglect the streak of light behind him. Peng! A vast amount of sword chi emanated from the dark-faced man's body, like thousands of grey divine swords. They spread out and sealed off this part of the world. Swoosh! The sword chi pierced through the air, creating countless whistling sounds. The dark-faced man cultivated earth sword chi, and he seemed to have attracted the power of the earth. The sword chi seemed to be everywhere, like a large net that intercepted the streak of light. "Li Buwei, what is the meaning of this?" The streak of light was forced back by the endless sword chi. When the light dissipated, an old woman wearing a light blue Daoist robe and a purple-gold Daoist crown appeared in the light. The dark-faced man, Li Buwei, was startled when he heard this, and then said with a serious expression, "Fellow Daoist Chi, I should be the one asking this. What is the meaning of you chasing us?" "He, fellow Daoist Li, let us pass. You can't stop us by yourself," the middle-aged man, Dongfang Haotian, said with a smile. "I am looking for a disciple of the Green Spirit Peak of the Taishan sect called Jiyu Fei. I suspect that you have taken him away," the old woman with white eyebrows and a wrinkled face said coldly. Although she was very old, so old that she didn't even have a few teeth left, no one dared to underestimate her because she was an old monster of the same generation as Shenyuan Old Monster and the others. Taishen Daoist Qi was a famous figure of the Taishen sect who had been famous for nearly 1,000 years. She was one of the few great masters of the Yushu realm in the world. If it weren't for Ji Yu Fei, she would not have left her place of cultivation and come to the north. For cultivators at the peak of the Yushu realm like Shenyuan Old Monster and Daoist Qi, the longevity grass was like a second life. It was the hope of becoming a demigod. As long as they took one more step, they would truly embark on the path of immortality. Their lifespan could be said to be endless. At this time, these old monsters who were near the end of their lifespans could no longer care so much. If a god stood in their way, they would slay a god. If a Buddha stood in their way, they would slay a Buddha. If a devil stood in their way, they would slay a devil. That old monster Shenyuan wanted the longevity grass for himself. Among the three great Daoist sects, there were many old monsters who had this idea. Everyone wanted to extend their lifespans and reach the demigod realm. Fellow Daoist, you must be joking. The three great Daoist sects are like brothers. How could we take away a disciple of the Taishen sect? Moreover, everyone saw with their own eyes that the disciple named Ji Yu Fei left with that powerful demonic cultivator. Even if we had the courage, we would not dare to provoke that powerful demonic cultivator, Li Buwei, the dark-faced man, said. Although the demonic cultivators and the Dao sects had formed an alliance and the two sects shared the virtual sky world, the demonic cultivators and the people of the Dao sects did not get along as harmoniously as they seemed on the surface. When Ji Yu Fei and the old turtle were together, the people of the three great Daoist sects, even the people of the Taishen sect, had some scruples. They did not dare to go forward and could only watch as Ji Yu Fei left with the old turtle. If you didn't have a guilty conscience, why did you leave in such a hurry? Chi Daoist said coldly. Her cloudy eyes fell on the dark-faced man's face. Chi Daoist's eyes seemed dim, but she looked at Li Buwei indifferently, causing a trace of fear to grow in Li Buwei's heart. Dongfang Haotian suddenly smiled and said, Senior Chi, if you want to know whether Ji Yu Fei is in their hands or not, it's actually very simple. We just need to chase after them and we will know everything. That's right. Get out of the way, or else don't blame me for being merciless. Chi Daoist nodded. Then, her cloudy eyes suddenly flashed with a sharp light like cold lightning. Although only a few words had passed, the three rays of light in front of them were already hundreds of miles away. As long as they delayed for a little longer, they would completely disappear into the southern horizon. Fellow Daoist Chi, you're courting death. Daoist Chi let out a stern shout and extended her right hand. The small golden fan in her hand immediately spun and rapidly grew larger. Specks of golden light shot out from the golden fan, and it was as if there was a strong, golden wind swirling around the fan. Whoosh! Chi Daoist no longer hesitated. She directly swung the fan at Li Buwei. Instantly, a strong wind howled as a golden storm appeared out of nowhere. It swept forward like a golden tsunami. Roar! Li Buwei's expression changed greatly. He let out a furious roar as a grey sword glow immediately shot out from his body. He was trying to block the golden wind that was sweeping toward him. However, that golden wind contained an unbelievable amount of power. With a single wave of Granny Chi's fan, it was as if space itself had been shattered. Heaven and earth trembled, and even the clouds in the surroundings were scattered by the fan. The golden wind was like a blade, wreaking havoc in all directions. Li Buwei's earth elemental sword glow was immediately blown away. He was also sent tumbling backward like a kite with a broken string. Whoosh! Chi Daoist sent Li Buwei flying with her fan. The golden fan immediately shrunk and returned to her palm. She then turned into a ray of light and chased after Li Buwei. Refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Chi Daoist left these words before she soared into the sky and chased after Qing Yangzi and the others. Hee hee. Dongfang Haotian let out two chuckles. His eyes flashed with an imperceptible sharpness as he also soared into the sky. The dark-faced man, Li Buwei, was sent flying thousands of feet away by Daoist Qi. Only then did he manage to stabilize himself. With a thought, The earth-flying sword that was sent flying by the metal wind immediately flew back and entered his body. A peak 9th layer Void Imperial expert is indeed powerful. Li Buwei watched Qi Daoist disappear into the distance. He reached out his hand to wipe the trace of blood from the corner of his mouth and murmured. He knew that Qi Daoist didn't try to kill him. Boom. At this moment, a sudden earth-shattering sound came from the distance. Li Buwei was startled and quickly looked in the direction of the sound. In the sky, countless golden sword qi danced in the air, forming a giant golden sword formation. At the eye of the formation, there was a violent energy fluctuation. The entire golden sword formation trembled continuously, releasing a great sword qi wave that caused one's heart to palpitate. The cold sword qi caused the surrounding temperature to drop. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. Thousands of golden sword qi trembled at the same time. A vast power surged out from the eye of the formation, as if there was an ancient giant beast attacking the sword formation. Shenyuan ancestor. Li Buwei was secretly shocked. This sword formation was truly amazing. It could be said to be the creation of the heavens and earth. Using one's own sword qi to turn thousands of sword qi into a mysterious sword formation, then using the power of the sword formation to activate the power of the heavens and earth, one could infinitely increase their power. The Guangqing Immortal sect's sword Immortal Dao was truly outstanding. It was not a coincidence that they could stand tall in the world of cultivation for so many years. They had the foundation and strength to do so. Ah! A shrill scream came from the sword formation. Li Buwei was shocked. Then, he saw a bloody shadow break through the layers of sword qi and rushed out from the eye of the formation. The speed of the bloody light was very fast. After a few flashes, it disappeared in the northern sky. Old monster Shenyuan, I will repay you tenfold for losing my arm. A voice came from the north. The bloody light traveled 1,000 miles in an instant. It was truly shocking. Chapter 410. Swoosh. A ray of light streaked across the sky like a bright meteor, passing over the endless mountains and shooting towards the south. The sun hung high in the sky, shining brightly. However, the cold that shrouded the northern lands could not be dispelled by the bright sunlight. Outside of the 100-mile radius of the abyss of immortals and demons, there was no ice and snow. Except for the lush vegetation, everywhere else was covered in ice and snow. In such a harsh environment, ordinary people absolutely could not survive in the wild. Within the ray of light, there was a short and fat figure. It was a short and fat old man with white eyebrows. At this time, the old man's face was full of panic, desperately flying in the air, as if there was something terrifying chasing after him. The ray of light swept past. The old man was a void-controlling realm cultivator. Even in the world of cultivation, it was rare to see him. A cultivator of this level, without the use of magic treasures, could soar into the sky and fly in the air just by manipulating the power of heaven and earth. He was a peerless expert. Just what had happened to make a peerless master so panicky? It was as if a mortal had suddenly seen a legendary ghost. Old man Dugu, leave that person. Suddenly, a voice rang out between the heavens and earth. This voice was erratic and eccentric, causing one's hair to stand on end when hearing it. The short and fat old man turned a deaf ear to it. He just kept urging his magic power to drive the ray of light, flying towards the south, not daring to respond. Old man Dugu, that voice, as if it came from the 18th level of hell, was eerie and horrifying. Moreover, no matter how fast the short and fat old man's ray of light was, the voice always reached his ears. The ray of light was like lightning. In the blink of an eye, the old man rushed out of the endless snow mountains, into the endless snow forest area. The northern lands was very big, but no one seemed to know how vast the northern lands was. The area of 10,000 miles was only the range of human activities, the vast majority of the uninhabited areas. No one knew where the end of the abyss of immortals and demons was. The abyss of immortals and demons, lying between the northern lands and the northern demon region, became a natural barrier between the demon region and the central plains. Some people say that the end of the abyss of immortals and demons is the end of the northern lands. Martial cultivators of the void-defending realm could carve runes and set up a temporary teleportation formation. However, The old man did not have the time to set up the teleportation formation. The person behind him would definitely not allow the old man to set up the teleportation formation and leave the northern lands. However, if it was just flying in the sky, it would be difficult to leave the northern lands without several days and nights of sleepless nights. Old man Dugu, leave that person, and I'll spare your life. The sinister voice kept ringing in the old man's ears. It was obvious that the person wanted to use his sound technique to disturb the old man's mind and slow him down. But cultivators that were able to cultivate to the void-controlling realm possessed minds that were incomparably firm, and it was difficult for ordinary demonic sounds and ghost howls to shake them or cause them to lose their minds. However, this sinister and strange voice seemed to possess a great magical power. Even though the short and fat man had sealed his hearing, the voice still rang out in his mind. This was an evil sound technique that could directly affect the opponent's mind. This was not an ordinary sound wave attack, but a mental attack. Old man Dugu, the soul-sucking ghost howls were endless. They were like sledgehammers filled with demonic nature that bombarded the old man's mind endlessly. The old man's mind was shaken, but he gritted his teeth and endured it. He did his best to guard his mind. He knew that if he lost his mind, the teleportation formation would definitely slow down, and the other party would catch up. When the old man thought about the strength of the person behind him, he could not help but change his expression. That was a terrifying person, even more terrifying than the old monsters of the three great Daoist sects. If he was caught by that person, death would be the best release. But he was afraid that even in death, he would be tortured and never be able to live again. That was the most terrifying thing. Above the endless forest of snow, there was only a single teleportation formation fleeing. Behind the teleportation formation, there was nothing. There was no teleportation formation, no figure, and no energy fluctuations. There seemed to be not a single ghost behind the old man. However, that tempting, demonic, and eerie voice was still unceasingly transmitted into the old man's mind. The fat old man did not dare to stop at all. The teleportation formation of a peerless expert was incomparably fast. Very soon, the old man had already flown 500 kilometers. But the forest of snow below was still endless. The forest was covered in snow, and it extended all the way to the horizon. It was as if there was no end. From time to time, powerful vicious beasts and even demonic beasts would be startled by the teleportation formation. They would let out earth-shattering roars and charge out of the forest. Regardless of whether it was vicious beasts or demonic beasts, they had yet to awaken their intelligence. Their bestial nature was greater than their divine nature, and powerful vicious beasts and demonic beasts all had a very strong sense of territory. Although the old man was flying through the sky, the vicious beasts and demonic beasts in the forest of snow below saw him as invading their territory, and they roared incessantly. Just as the teleportation formation of the old man flew over a basin, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the old man and blocked his path. "Get out of the way!" The old man shouted loudly, and then he opened his mouth to spit out a sharp sword light that was dazzling with golden light, and it pierced through the person in front of him. The sword light was like lightning. After it rushed out of the old man's mouth, it immediately grew to 100 feet. It exuded a chilling sword chi and instantly rushed to the person in front of him. The old man did not have any intention of stopping. He continued to charge forward behind the golden sword light. He did not even get a clear look at the person who had suddenly appeared in front of him before he had already attacked. "Dugu Feng." A cold shout came from the front. The voice was filled with a great majesty. The owner of the voice was definitely someone who had been in a high position for a long time. Then, the old man saw a large hand directly grabbing at his swordlight. A shocking scene appeared in front of Dugu Feng. His 30-meter-long swordlight, which was emitting an extremely sharp golden sword chi, was actually caught by the huge hand in front of him. It twisted and struggled violently like a snake in the huge hand. Moreover, the hand that caught the sword light did not stop. Instead, it continued to move forward, wanting to grab Dugu Feng as well. The short and fat Dugu Feng was like a bird that had thrown itself into a trap. Even if the huge hand did not come to grab him, he would still rush into the other person's hand. Dugu Feng's shock was no small matter. The person who suddenly appeared in front of him had a cultivation base that exceeded his imagination. This kind of person was not someone he could contend against. He hurriedly soared into the sky, wanting to avoid the giant hand. However, the giant hand emitted a terrifying energy wave, and with its supreme power, it sealed the space around it. Roar! Du Gufeng could no longer maintain his calm. He let out an angry roar and desperately circulated the magic power in his body. Endless golden sword chi shot out from his body like a golden divine light. The short and fat Du Gufeng seemed to have turned into a golden sun. The sword chi that exploded from his body was extremely powerful, causing the sun in the sky to lose its luster. Bam! Du Gufeng was knocked out for hundreds of meters. The sword light that was emitting from his body also crumbled. Blood began to drip down from the corner of his mouth. One move was enough to determine who was stronger. Even Du Gufeng's flying sword, which he had refined for hundreds of years and had long since fused with his body, had been taken away by his opponent, causing him to lose his greatest support. Remember that the cultivators of the Guangcheng sect walk the path of the sword immortal. They spend their entire lives training only one sword. Most of their abilities are based on that flying sword. After losing their flying sword, they are like a beast that has lost its claws and teeth. No matter how powerful they are, they can no longer hurt others. Shen Hongsha, it's you? Only now did Du Gufeng see who the person before him was. The person before him was standing in midair. He was wearing a Taoist robe, his temples were white, and his face was red. My name is not something you can say. Leave that person behind and get the hell out of here. The person who came was an old monster of the Shongqing sect, Shen Hongsha. Shen Hongsha had once fought with another old monster of the Guangcheng sect, Luo Xiao, for Ji Yufei. Of course, he did not have any good feelings towards the people of the Guangcheng sect. Who are you? I don't even know what you are talking about. Du Gufeng's body was filled with spiritual energy. He stared at the golden sword light in Shen Hongsha's hand and said nervously, "Flying sword." That was his flying sword. If Shen Hongsha hadn't used the giant hand to take away his flying sword, he would have turned and fled a long time ago. At this point, don't play tricks in front of me. Since you are not willing to hand over that person, then I can only do it myself, Shen Hongsha said as he pressed forward. He rubbed his fat palm a few times, causing Du Gufeng's life-bound flying sword to scatter and reveal its true form. It was a small golden sword that was half a foot long and extremely sharp. Who is so bold to interfere with my business? I have already reserved that person. Could it be that you, big fatty, dare to fight with me? Just at this moment, a sinister and erratic voice rang out in the void. No one knew where the source of this voice was, as though it had come from the void itself. Who's playing tricks? Shen Hongsha's face suddenly became angry. 2 rays of light shot out of his eyes as he scanned his surroundings. He hated people calling him a big fatty the most because he was a big fatty. Du Gufeng's expression changed. He knew that the big fiend chasing him had arrived. Qing Yangzi and junior brother Jiao would not be able to stop this fiend. Even Daopo Chi of the Supreme Mystery Sect had suffered at the hands of this fiend. He didn't know if this fiend could deal with the big fatty Shen Hongsha. Chapter 4:11. Ji Yufei is here. After Du Gufeng released the Heaven and Earth sleeve technique to hide Ji Yufei in his sleeve, he didn't forget to shout. He was afraid that others wouldn't know that the person who flew out from his sleeve was Ji Yufei. He quickly retreated and hid far away. Fight! Fight! Me. The short and fat old man Du Gufeng knew that he was no match for Shen Hongsha and the fiend that was chasing him, so he immediately decided to watch the fight from a distance. Void-controlling realm cultivators were all extremely shrewd and experienced. They knew that they couldn't win, so they gave up without any hesitation. Ji Yufei? Shen Hongsha's eyes immediately widened. He extended his hand and was about to grab the descending figure. His mine. Suddenly, a strong vibration came from the void nearby. Ripples spread out like transparent water waves. Then, a black figure directly walked out from the void. It was unknown what kind of secret technique that person had used to hide in the void. If he hadn't come out himself, no one would have known where he was. Even the fat old monster Shenhongsha didn't know where he was. The moment that person appeared, he also extended his hand and grabbed at Ji Yufei. "You're asking for death." Shenhongsha was shocked. He then raised his hand and a golden light immediately shot out from his hand and pierced through the person in front of him. That golden light was Du Gufeng's natal flying sword that Shenhongsha had collected. That flying sword had been refined by Du Gufeng day and night, nourished by his own sword energy day and night. It had long become a spiritual item. Once it left Shenhongsha's hand, it immediately emitted a bright golden sword light. Like a golden lightning, it flew towards the person in front of him to kill. A powerful sword chi immediately spread high up in the sky. Du Gufeng, who had retreated to the side, was shocked when he saw Shenhongsha throw out his flying sword. Then, he was overjoyed. He immediately used the power of his mind to recall the flying sword. His mind communicated with the flying sword. As a result, the golden sword light suddenly exploded with a dazzling light. The sword chi was so strong that it lit up the sky and earth in a golden color. Broad accomplishment flying sword? The person who walked out of the void was obviously shocked, but he did not retract his hand because of this. Instead, he continued to grab forward. The moment the golden sword light with unparalleled sword chi twisted around his arm, his hand happened to grab Ji Yufei's shoulder. "Keep the sword." Just at this moment, Du Gufeng, who had retreated far away, let out a low roar. Swish. Then like a golden snake, it flew back towards Du Gufeng. However, a scene that left Du Gufeng and Shenhongsha in disbelief appeared in front of their eyes. That person's arm that had been struck by the flying sword did not fall off. Instead, a black aura surged out from the place where the sword had struck. Afterwards, that arm was actually completely undamaged, without a trace of injury. "Profound yin ghost body? Are you from the plentiful city ghost palace?" Shenhongsha was startled, and his expression turned ugly. His mind was distracted, and the large hand that was reaching out actually stopped for a moment. In that moment of hesitation, Ji Yufei was grabbed by the mysterious person. At this time, Ji Yufei's entire body was surging with a tidal wave of energy. Endless life essence was causing his body to undergo a true transformation. His eyes were tightly closed, and he was still maintaining his cross-legged posture. Rays of light flickered on the mountain. The power of the 5 elements was resonating within his body, and the energy of life was surging within his flesh and bones. His face was contorted with pain, and his teeth were clenched tightly. His appearance was incomparably ferocious, and soybean-sized beads of sweat constantly seeped out from his forehead. The sweat brought along traces of impurities within his body. His body was undergoing a transformation, and his flesh and bones were being tempered. It was as if he was tempering a piece of divine metal. The more impurities were refined, the less impurities there were. Ji Yufei's body was undergoing a transformation in the direction of being flawless. His flesh and bones were still constantly cracking, and then healing. It was as if there were 2 diametrically opposed powers using his body as a battlefield. One was the power of destruction, and the other was the power of regeneration. His flesh and bones were being reconstructed, and he was enduring endless pain. Everything in the outside world seemed to have nothing to do with him, and he couldn't care less about it. It wasn't that he didn't want to care, but his senses, his sense of touch, were now filled with the word pain. Other than this feeling of pain, he couldn't feel anything else. Ha ha! So pure, such a huge amount of life essence. The mysterious person who walked out of the void was a middle-aged man with a face as pale as paper and dressed in linen clothes. This middle-aged man was tall and thin, and he had a long, narrow, horse-like face. His face was pale, and his complexion was frighteningly pale. He was the legendary soul reaper of the underworld, the white impermanence of the black and white impermanence. The middle-aged man's right hand grabbed Ji Yufei, and his left hand was really like the legendary white impermanence, holding a morning staff. This morning staff was made up of skulls the size of a child's fist, and the black eye sockets of the skulls faintly emitted a dark green light. This person. What's wrong with him? His body is very strange. The middle-aged man's face was full of surprise as he looked Ji Yufei up and down. His pair of mung-bin eyes flickered with an evil green light that was like a will-o'-the-wisp. True cultivators had already disappeared for countless years. Perhaps only the people from the ancient times knew what was happening to Ji Yufei's body. "You are the Qishan old ghost." Shen Hongsha looked at the middle-aged man and suddenly exclaimed. He had already seen through this person's background. "Huh?" The middle-aged man seemed a little surprised. His gaze left Ji Yufei and looked at Shen Hongsha. He said with a smile, "I didn't expect someone in this world to recognize me." Let me see. 1500 years. No, it should be 1800 years. I haven't left Mount Qi for 1800 years. The middle-aged man pondered and muttered to himself. Hiss. When Shen Hongsha and Du Gufeng heard this, they both sucked in a breath of cold air. Even Shen Hongsha, the old monster of the Guangqing celestial sect, changed his expression. This guy with a ghostly aura was the real old monster. Compared to him, Shen Hongsha was like a child and an adult. At this moment, 3 energy waves suddenly came from the north. Then, 3 rays of light, 1 in front and 2 behind, flew over quickly. It's Qing Yangzi and Junior Gao. Du Gufeng's white beard trembled and his face was full of joy. Qing Yangzi and Junior Gao stayed behind to block the middle-aged man and did not encounter any mishaps. Why is she here? Good timing. Shen Hongsha's eyes were like lightning. He immediately recognized the ray of light flying in front. That person was someone he knew. He was secretly happy. He was worried that he was not the opponent of the Qishan old ghost. Coincidentally, that familiar person came. If the two of them worked together, they might be able to fight the old ghost. Qishan old ghost, put that person down. The conveyance light was as fast as lightning, and a vast amount of transcendence energy rippled over. Before the person arrived, an old voice had already been heard. Chen-ph, a group of flies that don't know life from death. So annoying. The Qishan old ghost said in disdain and annoyance. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and pulled the storage pouch on Ji Yufei's waist. Then, he opened it to take a look. That horse-like white face was immediately startled and his expression became very ugly. Not in the storage pouch. The Qishan old ghost stuck the wailing skull stick on his waist. His right hand carried Ji Yufei while his left hand searched Ji Yufei's body. When Qing Yangzi's palm touched Ji Yufei's shoulder, it was repelled by the vast and mighty power that came out from Ji Yufei's body. However, the Qishan old ghost was as casual as grabbing a toy. The surging power in Ji Yufei's body did not affect him at all. Whoosh! There was a flash of light, and there was a mighty surge of mana. A dazzling ray of light, like a divine rainbow, wrapped around a figure and flew close in an instant. An old Taoist woman holding a golden palm leaf fan appeared from the ray of light. The old Daoist woman angrily pointed at the middle-aged man and shouted, "Qishan old ghost, do you want to become enemies with the 3 Dao sects?" At this time, the middle-aged man had already searched Ji Yufei's body, not even his socks and shoes. However, the thing he wanted did not seem to be on Ji Yufei's body. Impudent. The middle-aged man couldn't help being enraged. His pale face darkened, and his green beady eyes swept over Shen Hongsha and Daopo Qi. He coldly said, "You juniors, when I made a name for myself, your master was still drinking milk. You dare to use your Daoist gate to suppress me? Do you really think I don't dare to kill you?" Ghost Emperor Fengju was fighting an ancient devil in his own land and was in the limelight. The Ghost Dao cultivators all felt proud and puffed out their chests. Qishan old ghost naturally felt proud as well. Moreover, the Qishan old fart was right. In terms of seniority, the Qishan old fart was truly on par with Shen Hongsha and Granny Qi's ancestors. He was already in a bad mood because he couldn't find that thing on Ji Yufei's body, so how could he not be angry after being scolded by a junior? Whoosh! Whoosh! The sound of tearing through the air echoed once more. The other 2 rays of light also flew close and disappeared. 2 figures appeared in the sky. These 2 were the dark-skinned youth, Qing Yangzi, and the tall and thin old man surnamed Gao. The 2 of them were in a sorry state, as if they had fought with someone. The crown on Qing Yangzi's head had disappeared, and there were a few holes in his clothes. His hair was messy, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. The old man surnamed Gao was the same as Qing Yangzi. His hair was also messy, his clothes were torn, and there was blood on the corner of his mouth. It was clear that they were injured during the battle. Shen Hongsha took a step forward and solemnly said to Qi Shan, "Old ghost, let's talk. First, let go of the person in your hand. You want this person, but I won't give it to you." Old ghost Qi Shan seemed to be truly enraged. As he spoke, he suddenly opened his mouth. That mouth was like a bottomless black hole. Vast and mighty black gas surged out, instantly enveloping Ji Yufei and then devouring him. Chapter 412. Old Ghost Qi Shan, you. Everyone present was shocked to the extreme. Old Ghost Qi Shan had actually swallowed Ji Yufei. It should be known that the only hope of the three great Daoist sects to obtain the longevity grass was Ji Yufei. Among the three great Daoist sects, there were many old monsters who were nearing the end of their lifespans. There were even some old monsters who used various secret techniques and did not hesitate to seal themselves in order to prolong their lifespans. To the old monsters of the three great Daoist sects, the longevity grass could be said to be a second life. 200 years of lifespan might be enough for them to break through the shackles of cultivation. If one did not become a demigod, one would not be able to live forever. No matter how powerful one's magic was or how invincible one's magical powers were, when the time came, no matter how reluctant one was, no matter how unwilling one had to say goodbye to this world. Only demigods had hope of living forever. However, on the Tenglong continent, how many cultivators could truly see through life and death and become demigods? Old Ghost Qi Shan had swallowed Ji Yufei. This had undoubtedly completely offended the old monsters of the three great Daoist sects. Roar. Old Ghost Qi Shan, you have gone too far. Shen Hongsha was extremely agitated. The fat on his face kept twitching and his eyes were red. It was as if he had an irreconcilable hatred with Old Ghost Qi Shan. Old Ghost Qi Shan had swallowed Ji Yufei and cut off the path of immortality for Shen Hongsha and the other old monsters. However, this also meant that he was absolutely irreconcilable with the people of the three great Daoist sects. After Shen Hongsha woke up, he immediately fought with Old Ghost Qi Shan. For people like Shen Hongsha who were nearing the end of their lifespans, there was nothing in this world that they were afraid of. At most, they would just die. Talisman, come out. Shen Hongsha was furious. With a roar, a vast amount of magic power immediately surged out of his body. Countless talismans rushed out of his body and flickered with dazzling divine light. Like countless sharp blades, they spun and flew towards Old Ghost Qi Shan. Every single talisman was like a heavenly pattern, emitting a great amount of magical energy that drew in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, then fused with the talisman, causing the power of the talisman to increase greatly. I've roamed the world for 1,000 years and have never been afraid of anyone. That brat's life essence is so pure and vast. As long as I refine that brat, I might be able to reverse life and death and be reborn. Old Ghost Qi Shan said coldly. It was as if he was looking at a dead man. His dark green eyes stared emotionlessly at Shen Hongsha, who was charging over. Boundless runes covered the sky and covered the earth, shaking the heavens and earth, activating the energy of the heavens and earth, displaying a great power. Wherever the runes passed, ripples would appear in the void. Facing a strong move, Old Ghost Qi Shan was awe-inspiring and fearless. He stretched out his hand and took out the Wailing Skull Staff from his waist. Then, he shook the Wailing Skull Staff. The 2 skulls that were the size of a child's fist immediately flew up. Black gas surged and they spat out dark green ghost fire from their mouths. They became the size of a wheel and charged forward. The Wailing Skull Staff turned into 18 horrifying ghost heads. It was as if 18,000-year-old ghosts had suddenly awakened. They spat out endless ghost fire from their mouths and burned the flying runes. At this moment, Old Ghost Qi, Dugu Feng, and the others, who were both shocked and furious, had already sent out 7 or 8 information transmission talismans to summon their fellow sect members nearby to help. Then, Dugu Feng, Qing Yangzi, and the others spat out a flying sword and charged at Old Ghost Qi Shan. If they killed Old Ghost Qi Shan at this moment, They might be able to save Jiu Fei. The 3 rays of sword light were like 3 divine rainbows. They pierced through the air and rushed towards old ghost Qi Shan. In the sky, sword Qi instantly filled the sky. The resplendent sword light lit up the sky and even overshadowed the light of the sun. Whoosh! Old ghost Qi waved the golden palm leaf fan in her hand and fiercely fanned it at old ghost Qi Shan. A golden gale immediately surged out. It was like countless golden blades that tore through the void and attacked old ghost Qi Shan. The golden palm leaf fan in old ghost Qi Shan's hand was a rare treasure. It could fan out a metal elemental wind. If an ordinary cultivator was fanned by it, their flesh, bones, and even their nascent soul would completely collapse and melt into the void. The golden gale could cut through bones and flesh. It possessed great power. What is there to be afraid of when all of you attack together? Old ghost Qi Shan was incomparably arrogant. 18 ghost heads the size of wagon wheels surrounded him. Black gas lingered around them and vast ghost Qi surged. The ghost heads spat out dark green ghost fire from their mouths. The evil ghost fire seemed to ignite the void. The ghost fire actually blocked the attack of thousands of runes. Even the metal wind from old ghost Qi Shan's fan could not blow away the dark green ghost fire. Du Gufeng's 3 sword lights broke through the layers of ghost Qi and slashed at the ghost heads shrouded in black gas. There was a clanging sound as if the ghost heads were made of divine metal. 1,000 ghosts greeting the sect. Old ghost Qi Shan let out a loud roar that shook the heavens and earth. A terrifying ghost Qi surged out from his body and shrouded the heavens and earth. The ghost Qi soared into the sky and actually turned the heavens and earth into a ghost realm. The heavens and earth darkened. Countless ghost shadows appeared in the pitch-black ghost Qi. 18 ghost heads that spat out ghost fire were faintly discernible in the heavy black fog and blocked all the attacks. The heavens and earth were instantly filled with the sound of ghosts. In the ghost Qi that shrouded the heavens and earth, there seemed to be thousands of ghosts howling. The eerie and terrifying aura filled the heavens and earth. Go. Kill them. Old ghost Qi Shan's cold voice came from the black fog. There was not a trace of emotion in his voice. Shen Hongsha, old ghost Qi Shan, and the others had already retreated. Old ghost Qi Shan was a terrifying figure that had roamed the world for hundreds and thousands of years. Other than demigods, who could pose a threat to him, perhaps even old monsters at the peak of the 9th heaven of the void controlling realm would not be able to harm him. The ghost Tao was mysterious and unfathomable. Old ghost Qi Shan had condensed the Xianyin ghost body. Any magical treasures, other than a few rare treasures, would not be able to harm him at all. It could be said that he had an indestructible body. Only special methods could be used to completely destroy him. Ghost Qi surged and 18 huge black shadows walked out from the black fog. They were 18 giants that were 10 zhong tall and were covered in black. Shen Hongsha and the others were shocked. They felt a terrifying energy fluctuation from the 18 black giants. It was the eerie and terrifying power of the ghost Tao. What shocked everyone the most was that the 18 black giants did not have real bodies of flesh and blood. Their tall bodies seemed to be completely condensed from endless pitch-black ghost Qi. The heads of the 18 black giants were impressively the 18 skulls that were the size of wheels that could spit ghost fire. The eye sockets of the skulls were emitting 2 faint green evil lights. And what made people's scalps tingle was that behind the 18 terrifying malicious ghosts were densely packed faint black shadows. It was as if old ghost Qi Shan had opened the gates of hell and released countless ghosts and malicious ghosts from the underworld. 10,000 ghosts paying homage. It was the true 10,000 ghosts paying homage. After the 18 malicious ghosts walked out from the black fog of ghost Qi, they charged towards the crowd. Behind the malicious ghosts, there were countless ghostly shadows that followed. The terrifying malicious ghosts were like 18 generals that commanded thousands of troops and horses. They led countless ghostly soldiers and swept across the world. They silently charged towards Shen Hongsha, old ghost Qi, and the others. There were no shouts, no roars. Under the leadership of the generals, the countless ghostly soldiers silently charged forward. The murderous aura they emitted was vast and mighty in the world. The murderous aura shot into the sky. Asterisk rumble. The entire world was shaken by the 18 flood-like ghostly soldiers. Ghostly chi soared into the sky, and the murderous aura was vast and mighty. It made people feel as if they were in the middle of a terrifying battlefield of slaughter. At this moment, the sound of breaking air came from the distance. Several streaks of light appeared in the sky and quickly flew towards the battlefield. The nearby experts of the Dao sect who had received the message from Dugu Feng, Old Ghost Chi, and the others were rushing over. Old Ghost Chi Shan, you will regret your actions, Shen Hongsha shouted. Light runes surged out of his body. Each light rune was like a divine rune that emitted a vast and unfathomable power. He quickly retreated, dodging the charging ghost general that had a huge ghostly head. Thousands of light runes rained down on the ghost general at the same time. Asterisk boom. Asterisk asterisk boom. Asterisk asterisk boom. Asterisk asterisk boom. Asterisk asterisk. When the countless light runes struck the ghost general and the incorporeal ghostly shadows behind it, they all exploded with a resplendent light and a terrifying destructive power. The power of the light runes' explosion blocked the ghost general that was charging over. The ghostly shadows behind the ghost general turned into black smoke and dissipated into the void along with the light runes. At this moment, endless ghostly chi gathered towards the ghost general. It condensed into a pitch-black saber that emitted a vast and eerie aura in the ghost general's hand. Asterisk swish. Asterisk. The ghost general was incomparably ferocious. He directly swung his saber at the retreating Shen Hongsha. The pitch-black saber light on the saber soared hundreds of meters into the air, creating an ear-piercing sound as it chased after Shen Hongsha. The pitch-black saber chi seemed to slice through the void. A vast and mighty energy storm appeared in the void. The ear-piercing sound of the air being torn apart sounded like the wails of thousands of ghosts. This saber could be said to be steady, evil, ferocious, ruthless, and terrifying at the same time. Even the old monster Shen Hongsha, the big fatty, was shocked. The 18 ghost generals used endless ghostly chi to condense their ghostly bodies. They used the skulls as their heads. Only the skulls were tangible objects. Their bodies and even their weapons were all condensed from ghostly chi. However, even with the ghostly bodies and weapons condensed from endless ghostly chi, these 18 ghost generals were still incomparably terrifying and displayed a terrifying battle strength. Shen Hongsha consecutively shot out 3 powerful runes before he shattered the 100-meter-long saber light that was chasing after him. The other ghost generals led the ghost soldiers and had already surrounded Dugu Feng and the other experts of the Guangqing celestial sect. Only Daopo Chi continuously fanned the golden palm leaf fan in her hand, creating waves of golden wind that blew away the countless ghostly shadows. She rushed out of the encirclement of the 4 ghost generals. Asterisk swish. Asterisk asterisk swish. Asterisk asterisk swish. Asterisk. The intense sound of the air being torn apart had already reached the vicinity. A few powerful auras surged over from afar. The experts of the 3 great Daoist sects had finally arrived. Chapter 413. 4-inch boom. A thunderclap shook the sky, and lightning and fire descended from the sky. Boundless ghost chi and countless ghost phantoms vanished into thin air. An important figure was unleashing lightning magic. The experts from the 3 great Daoist societies had arrived after receiving the message talismans. Heaven and earth trembled. Origin chi surged and thunder filled the sky. The person who made the move was definitely a terrifying cultivator at the level of an old monster. The powerful power of thunder dispersed most of the dark ghost chi that covered the sky. Roar. A furious roar was emitted from within the churning and surging ghost fog. A frightening energy ripple that was as heavy as a mountain and as vast as the ocean surged out from within the ghost aura. The pitch-black ghost fog seemed to possess intelligence as it pounced towards the lightning fire that had yet to dissipate and annihilated it within the ghost fog. Several powerful auras appeared nearby. The dark and gloomy ghost chi covered the sky again in an instant, turning the day into night. Old Ghost Chi Shan was too powerful. Even the thunder and fire that filled the sky could not disperse the gloomy and terrifying ghost chi. The countless ghost shadows that had been dispersed once again appeared from the black ghost chi. Under the leadership of the 18 ghost generals, they charged at all the cultivators present. The tens of thousands of evil spirits seemed to be indestructible. Everyone present felt their scalps go numb. It seemed that if they did not kill old ghost Qi Shan, these evil spirits would not truly disappear. Boom, boom, boom. Thunderous booms rang out one after another, as though an ancient god of thunder was performing a spell. Boundless lightning and fire exploded out, causing the 18 ghost generals to tumble back in retreat. The ghost bodies formed by the boundless ghost Qi were constantly being torn apart, but it was difficult to break them apart. Eventually, they reformed again. The 18 ghost generals' skulls, which were as large as wheels, continued to spit out dark green ghost flames that burned toward Shenhongsha and the others. They looked extremely ferocious. The moment the thunder and green ghost flames came into contact, they cancelled each other out and dissipated in the void. The power of thunder and fire was of extreme yang. It was the nemesis of the netherworld ghost flames that the 18 ghost generals spat out. The netherworld ghost flames were of extreme yin and cold, and the power of thunder and fire were polar opposites. Streaks of light constantly rushed over from all directions. After a while, no less than 10 powerful cultivators had arrived nearby on streaks of light. Some were watching, and some were making a move. The people who were attacking were all elders from the 3 great Daoist societies. The experts from the other powers all had misgivings about what was happening. Not only did they not attack, but they were also unwilling to get too close to the battle. Instead, they hovered in midair and watched from afar. It was all because when the ancient devil came into being, Ghost Emperor Fengju displayed a terrifying strength that could rival the ancient devil. No one was willing to provoke Ghost Emperor Fengju, or even other people of the Ghost Dao. However, the old monsters of the 3 great Daoist sects did not have any misgivings. After all, their lifespans were nearing their end. Swoosh! Suddenly, a 3,000-meter-long golden sword Qi descended from the sky. The extremely powerful and chilling sword Qi seemed to be able to split the world in half as it slashed towards the black mist that enveloped the area. The golden sword Qi, like a heavenly sword, directly broke through the layers of black fog and ghostly aura. Under the sword light, the incomparably evil black fog and ghostly aura dissipated in the void like snow under the sun. One could vaguely see countless ghosts dissipating under the sword light. Hey! Within the black fog and ghostly aura, old ghost Qi Shan sensed the extremely powerful sword Qi. He seemed a little surprised, and his expression finally changed. Under the golden sword light, the black fog and ghostly aura quickly dissipated. A figure sitting cross-legged in the void appeared. That person was a tall, thin, middle-aged man in linen clothes. When the golden sword Qi suddenly appeared and slashed down, Shenhongsha, Daopo Qi, and the others had already retreated. They had already recognized the origin of the golden sword light. When the golden sword Qi slashed down, old ghost Qi Shan, who was sitting cross-legged in the void, grabbed the air with his right hand. Then, the 18 skulls of the ghost generals instantly flew back into his hand. The skulls that were the size of wheels quickly shrank. Then, they connected together and formed an evil morning staff made of 18 skulls the size of a baby's fist. Clang! There was an extremely ear-piercing sound of metal colliding and rubbing. The extremely sharp golden sword light was actually blocked by the morning staff in old ghost Qi Shan's hand. A circle of ripples that could be seen with the naked eye spread in all directions with old ghost Qi Shan as the center. It was a terrifying vibration of the void that could tear everything apart. Wherever the circle of ripples passed, the endless ghostly aura around old ghost Qi Shan, along with the countless ghost soldiers that appeared in the ghostly aura, instantly dissipated in the void. As the ghostly aura and black fog that shrouded the world dissipated, the surrounding sky became bright again. Rumble! The void shook violently. Old ghost Qi Shan, who was sitting cross-legged in the void, was struck by the 1,000-foot-long sword light and sank 100 feet before he stopped sinking. Then, he shook the morning staff in his hand. Bang! With a bang, the 1,000-foot-long golden sword light that emitted endless sword aura was shattered by the Xianyin ghost power that came out of the morning staff. It turned into countless golden spiritual lights that shot in all directions. Shenhongsha, Daopo Qi, and the others immediately cried out in alarm as they retreated. These golden rays of light that exploded out still possessed a powerful killing power. They were like rays of destructive divine light that pierced through the void. Old Ghost Chi Shan, a loud shout came from the distant sky. Then, everyone saw a white-haired young man flying over from afar on a golden sword light. His sleeves fluttered in the wind. It's old monster Shenyuan from the Guangcheng Celestial Sect. I didn't expect him to come to the north. Among the peerless experts who were watching from afar, someone recognized the white-haired young man. The white-haired young man came very quickly. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived near them on the sword light. When Du Gufeng and the others from the Guangcheng Celestial Sect saw the young man, they immediately revealed a look of joy. Sigh. It's impossible to refine that brat now. Old Ghost Chi Shan stood up from the void and looked at the white-haired young man with interest. He wanted to refine Ji Yu Fei, who had been swallowed into his body. However, there were already several powerful experts from the three great Daoist sects, so he had no choice but to take this seriously. Ancestor Shenyuan. Ji Yu Fei. Ji Yu Fei has been swallowed by Old Ghost Chi Shan. Du Gufeng, Qing Yangzi, and the others immediately went to meet the white-haired young man. Du Gufeng said excitedly. What? Old monster Xuanyuan's eyes immediately widened and his expression changed. Swallowed, the longevity grass. Thinking of this, even someone like old monster Shenyuan felt his hands and feet go cold. Du Gufeng's words also caused the other 7 or 8 elders of the three great Daoist sects to be dumbfounded. They were extremely shocked. This time, the elders of the three great Daoist sects who had entered the northern lands were all old monsters who did not care about worldly affairs. They only focused on cultivation, hoping to break through to the demigod realm before their lifespans came to an end. These old monsters had pinned their hopes of prolonging their lifespans on the longevity grass on Ji Yu Fei's body. Now, they suddenly heard that Ji Yu Fei had been swallowed by Old Ghost Chi Shan. How could they not be shocked, angry, and excited? After learning that Ji Yu Fei had been swallowed by Old Ghost Chi Shan, the old monsters of the three great Daoist sects were immediately enraged. Their eyes turned red. Kill him. Refine his soul so that he can't even be a ghost. What's the point of saying so much? Do it. The old monsters of the three great Daoist sects all took out their magic treasures and rushed toward Old Ghost Chi Shan with murderous intent. They wanted to tear Old Ghost Chi Shan to pieces and then kill him. Seeing this situation, even Old Ghost Chi Shan, who had dominated the world for thousands of years, could not help but be moved. When more than 10 old monsters at the peak of the 9th heaven of the void-controlling realm joined forces, even a demigod would be shocked. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Even someone as strong as Old Ghost Chi Shan was a little timid at this moment. His body instantly became blurry and faint. Oh no, he wants to escape. Old monster Xuanyuan's expression changed. He immediately shouted and pointed his right hand forward. A dazzling sword light suddenly shot out from his finger and pierced toward Old Ghost Chi Shan. However, at this moment, Old Ghost Chi Shan had already used a secret technique. He turned into a faint black shadow and rushed out of the crowd's encirclement. The Ghost Dao's escape technique was extremely fast. It could be said that he could travel thousands of miles in an instant. The golden sword Qi that old monster Shenyuan shot out only destroyed an afterimage. Damn it! Don't let him escape. If I don't kill him, I will not be able to dispel the hatred in my heart. The old monsters of the three major Dao sects all controlled their escape lights and chased after the black shadow. Old Ghost Chi Shan had destroyed their last hope. Old monster Shenyuan and the others simply wanted to skin him alive. Swoosh, 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 a vast amount of magic power surged in the sky. Powerful auras burst out without the slightest bit of concealment. For these old monsters who were at the end of their lifespans, there was no longer anything to worry about at this moment. Even if Ghost Emperor Fengju came personally, they would still dare to attack him. Among the dozen old monsters of the three major Dao sects, there were a few people with extremely terrifying cultivation. They were only a step away from the demigod realm. 3 or 4 dazzling escape lights flew in the front. One of the escape lights wrapped around a white-haired young man. Old monster Shenyuan hated Old Ghost Chi Shan to the core. He used all his strength to control the sword light and chased after old ghost Qi Shan. The Guangqing celestial sect's flying sword technique was unparalleled in the cultivation world. Out of all the flying techniques, it was the fastest. At this moment, the speed of the escape lights was revealed. The people of the Guangqing celestial sect were in the front while the people of the Shongqing sect and the Taishan sect were lagging behind. However, even though the Guangqing celestial sect's flying sword technique was incomparably fast, they were still gradually left behind by old ghost Qi Shan. The Ghost Dao's escape technique seemed to be even better than the Guangqing celestial sect's flying sword technique. However, just as everyone thought that they would not be able to catch up to the hateful old ghost Qi Shan, an exclamation suddenly sounded in front of them. After that, the fleeing light that old ghost Qi Shan had turned into fell from the sky like a black meteor. This book. Chapter 414. Boom. Old ghost Qi Shan's black escape light fell from the sky like a black meteor, directly smashing a snowy peak. Countless mountain rocks and soil exploded, and the mountains shook. What's going on? Old monster Xuanyuan's sword light was like lightning, rushing forward in an instant. The scattered rocks and soil were all blocked by the sword light outside his body. The rocks that weighed thousands of kilograms and tens of thousands of kilograms flew in all directions like meteorites. The old monsters that were chasing behind immediately rushed forward. However, even if it was a real meteorite falling from the sky, it would not be able to hurt these experts at the peak of the ninth heaven of the void controlling realm who had cultivated for thousands of years. In front of them, there were a few especially bright escape lights that emitted especially strong waves of supernatural power. They directly broke through the flying rocks and soil and rushed over. They had already locked on to old ghost Qi Shan's aura. Even if the exploded rocks and soil blocked their vision, they still knew where old ghost Qi Shan was. After old ghost Qi Shan directly smashed a snowy peak, he flew for a few miles before falling into a snowy hill. The earth trembled, and dust soared into the sky. The hill was directly smashed into pieces, and the ground within a radius of several li was hit by the mighty energy fluctuations, causing it to undulate like waves. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 escape lights that were like divine rainbows rushed out from the exploded rocks and dust. In an instant, they arrived at the place where old ghost Qi Shan fell. Old monster Shenyuan and the other 2 old men with wrinkled skin, teeth, and heads that had almost all fallen off stood in the void, pressing forward from 3 directions. Whoa! Suddenly, a shrill scream came from the ground. The ground within a few hundred feet was completely shattered, and a huge pit appeared in the middle of the hill. Roar! Under the ground, old ghost Qi Shan continuously let out blood-curdling screams. Endless ghost Qi and black fog rushed out from the big pit on the ground, instantly enveloping a radius of 12 miles. Old monster Shenyuan and the 2 old men looked at each other and stopped at the same time. Something seemed to be wrong, and they decided to wait and see first. Roar! How could this be? Old ghost Qi Shan's terrified voice came from the endless black fog of ghost Qi. He seemed to be in trouble. Old freak Shenyuan and the 2 old men retreated. At that moment, Daoist Qi, with her golden palm leaf fan in hand, arrived in the vicinity, followed by the other old freaks from the 3 great Daoist societies. When the light dissipated, more than 12 figures exuded powerful fluctuations like mountains stood in the void. Everyone stared in shock at the churning black fog of ghost Qi below. The ghostly black fog emitted an incomparably powerful and eerie aura. This aura caused one to feel very uncomfortable, and it made one feel a chill down one's spine. No one knew what had happened to old ghost Qi Shan. The experts of the 3 great Daoist sects were all watching. However, they had sealed off an area to prevent old ghost Qi Shan from escaping. Old ghost Qi Shan's terrified roar reverberated through the world. Something terrifying seemed to have happened to him, causing him to be terrified to the extreme. In the distant sky, there were flashes of light. The experts of the other forces had also caught up, but they did not approach. For the peerless experts of the other forces, whether it was the Ghost Palace of Plentiful City or the 3 great Daoist societies, they were not willing to provoke them. They had some misgivings, so they did not want to get too close. Roar! Stinking brat, there is no need to struggle. Just let me refine you. Old Ghost Qi Shan's panicked and furious voice came from the eerie black fog of Ghost Qi Shan. Damned old ghost, we still don't know who will be refining who. Another voice came from the churning black fog of Ghost Qi Shan. When the old freaks outside heard this voice, they could not help but be stunned for a moment. Then, they were overjoyed. Ji Yufei, who had been swallowed by old Ghost Qi Shan, was still alive. This group of old freaks was truly overjoyed. They all thought that Ji Yufei had been killed by old Ghost Qi Shan and had been swallowed and refined. Who would have thought that things would take a turn for the better? The hope of immortality had not been completely cut off. You little brat, I am so angry. Old Ghost Qi Shan roared again and again. The vast and boundless power of the Ghost Tao surged out from the black fog of Ghost Qi Shan. Rumble, the entire ground shook and cracks appeared on the ground. Heaven and earth were shaking and swaying. Old Ghost Qi Shan wanted to use force to refine Ji Yufei. Not good. Old Ghost Shen Yuan and the others were shocked. For the longevity grass, for the slim chance of survival, they would definitely not let old Ghost Qi Shan refine Ji Yufei. Several of the most powerful cultivators immediately took action. Buzz. The sound of a sword resounded through heaven and earth. Then, Kai. There was a sharp whistling sound. It was like fine silk being cut by sharp scissors. A golden sword light soared for thousands of feet and slashed at the surging black fog of Ghost Qi Shan below. Wherever the sword light went, it seemed to cut through the void. There was nothing it could not break. Where the sword light pointed, the black fog of Ghost Qi Shan that covered a radius of a few miles was actually cut in half by the golden sword light. When old Ghost Shen Yuan slashed out thousands of feet of sword light, the other two old men also took out their own magic treasures. One of the old men held an ancient bronze mirror. The mirror emitted a dazzling seven-colored divine light and shone down. The endless black fog of Ghost Qi Shan dissipated under the illumination of the seven-colored divine light. 9 balls of aqua blue light rushed out of the other old man's body. Within the light, there were 9 fist-sized blue pearls that emitted a terrifying fluctuation. They were like 9 small blue suns that rotated around the old man's body. Go! The old man lightly shouted. His skinny finger pointed downwards. The 9 blue pearls immediately emitted a terrifying energy fluctuation and bombarded downwards. It was as if 9 blue suns were falling from the sky at the same time, shaking the entire world. The 3 powerful cultivators attacked together. The endless black fog of Ghost Qi Shan immediately dissipated like snow. A figure with disheveled hair appeared in the huge pit. Roar! You bunch of juniors, deserve to die. Old Ghost Qi Shan's expression was extremely ferocious. He roared at the sky and waved the white bone morning staff that was refined from 18 ghost heads in his hand. It shattered the thousands of feet of sword light, dispersed the 7-colored divine light, and blasted away the 9 blue pearls that emitted endless mana fluctuations like the blue suns. He displayed an unparalleled combat power that made people's hearts palpitate. War. After resolving the attacks of the 3 powerful cultivators, old Ghost Qi Shan suddenly hugged his stomach and rolled on the ground. He let out a shrill scream of pain. The black fog of Ghost Qi Shan was dispersed by the 3 powerful cultivators. Everyone was shocked by old Ghost Qi Shan's appearance. Old Ghost Qi Shan, who was rolling and roaring in the huge pit, had a bulging stomach. That stomach was 3 times bigger than a pregnant woman. A powerful fluctuation of power came from his stomach. That power was righteous but not evil. It was not the eerie and terrifying power of the Ghost Tao. You want to refine me? I'll make you explode. A muffled sound came from old Ghost Qi Shan's abdomen. Then, old Ghost Qi Shan's abdomen began to swell. Ji Yufei, who had been swallowed into old Ghost Qi Shan's stomach, did not seem to die. From his voice, he did not seem to be injured at all. Old monster Shenyuan and the others wanted to attack again, but when they heard Ji Yufei's voice, they stopped and stood in the void. After Ji Yufei was swallowed by old Ghost Qi Shan, he quickly woke up because he sensed danger. Even though he was enduring the great pain from the transformation of his flesh and bones, he had no choice but to wake up. Martial artists used their Yuan Qi to refine their bodies day and night. Their bodies were usually more sensitive to danger than their divine sense. Ji Yufei's body immediately reacted when he sensed danger. When Ji Yufei learned that he had been swallowed into old ghost Qi Shan's stomach, he did not feel fear. Instead, he used the divine weapon's essence to protect his body and guided the power of the inner heaven and earth out. Therefore, the power of the inner heaven and earth that flowed out from Ji Yufei's glabella quickly swelled in old ghost Qi Shan's stomach. Finally, old ghost Qi Shan's stomach expanded into a ball. Ji Yufei sat cross-legged in the endless darkness and muttered to himself, "I don't believe that you can even refine my power of the inner heaven and earth. I'll make you explode." There was no need to doubt old ghost Qi Shan's strength. He was probably the most powerful figure in the Ghost Dao other than Ghost Emperor Fengju. At this moment, he was hugging his stomach and rolling in the huge pit as though he was in extreme pain. Roar! Old ghost Qi Shan suddenly roared. He gritted his teeth and endured the pain coming from his stomach. He sat cross-legged and his body quickly grew larger. Soon, his body became thousands of feet tall. Then, he spat out a black fog of ghost Qi. He wanted to spit out Ji Yufei. At this time, Ji Yufei's body transformation did not stop. Endless life essence was still surging in his body. His flesh, blood, tendons, and bones had already been successfully reconstructed 6 times. The strength of his flesh, blood, tendons, and bones had already transformed to an unbelievable level. However, Ji Yufei knew that the reconstruction of his flesh, blood, tendons, and bones had to go through 9 times before it was complete. There were still 3 more times. The last 3 reconstructions would be harder and longer than the last. As he circulated the power of the heaven and earth with all his might, the image of an ancient cauldron began to appear around Ji Yufei and enveloped him in the cauldron. "I don't believe that you can refine this mountain and river cauldron." Ji Yufei was secretly determined. He began to circulate his Shen Qi and guided the power of the inner heaven and earth to the mountain and river cauldron. Ji Yufei's idea was very simple. He wanted to pour a large amount of power into the mountain and river cauldron to stimulate its power. Old ghost Qi Shan did not know anything. He only wanted to spit out Ji Yufei. At this time, he could no longer care so much. He had already felt a great threat. He regretted it a little. Not everything could be swallowed so casually. Ji Yufei's inner heaven and earth shook. Endless power of the heaven and earth poured into the mountain and river cauldron. When the inner heaven and earth was about to collapse because of the power of the heaven and earth that maintained the balance of the heaven and earth, the mountain and river cauldron in the center of the inner heaven and earth suddenly shook slightly. It was at this moment that the faint and illusory image of the ancient cauldron outside Ji Yufei's body emitted a pressure that made people tremble. It was as if a terrifying beast that could destroy the entire world had been awakened from its slumber. Chapter 4:15. Old ghost Qi Shan immediately felt that something was wrong. His 1,000-jong-tall ghost body emitted boundless energy ripples. The terrifying Xian Yin ghost power condensed into rays of black light. Like black lightning, they circled around his body. He frantically condensed the source power of the ghost Dao and spat out a black fog of ghost Qi. A large amount of Xian Yin ghost power rushed out of his body, wanting to bring Ji Yufei out with him. However, although the mountain and river cauldron did not truly appear from Ji Yufei's inner world, even though it was an illusory shadow that enveloped Ji Yufei's body, it was as heavy as a mountain. It was a world of its own. Even though old ghost Qi Shan's stomach was surging with boundless ghost power, he still could not move the mountain and river cauldron. Roar! Old ghost Qi Shan roared at the sky. He did not even care about the old monsters of the 3 great Dao sects. He naturally had extraordinary strength. He started to activate the Xian Yin ghost power without caring about anything, wanting to refine Ji Yufei. However, the cauldron of mountain and river emitted an unfathomable power. This power was simply unstoppable. As it seeped out of his body, terrifying cracks began to appear on old ghost Qi Shan's body. It was as if an exquisite porcelain had been shattered. There was no blood seeping out of the cracks. Instead, there were traces of ghost power that were as black as ink. Old ghost Qi Shan's appearance was extremely ferocious and terrifying. Impossible. How could this be? Old ghost Qi Shan was completely shocked. He had the urge to curse and shouted, "The mountain and river cauldron, It's the real mountain and river cauldron. How could it be in my stomach? Old Ghost Qishan could be said to be one of the few true old monsters in the Tenglong continent. He started his cultivation early, much earlier than Old Monster Shenyuan and the others. Moreover, Ghost Emperor Fengju and Old Ghost Qishan were inextricably linked. Ghost Emperor Fengju was an almighty from the ancient era and knew many ancient secrets. In the Fengju Ghost City, there was a replica of the mountain and river cauldron. The Qishan Old Ghost naturally knew the origin of the mountain and river cauldron. However, the mountain and river cauldron was only a legendary treasure. It had disappeared since ancient times. The Qishan Old Ghost could not believe that the mountain and river cauldron was in the hands of a little cultivator. With the protection of the divine weapon and the cauldron of mountain and river, Ji Yufei could be said to be absolutely safe. Unless a peerless demigod made a move and used a great technique to break the cauldron of mountain and river on Ji Yufei's body, no one would be able to harm him. It was obvious that Old Ghost Qishan's cultivation was still a little bit away from the half-god realm. It was this little bit of difference that caused him to be in danger. At this moment, more and more cracks appeared on Old Ghost Qishan's ghost body that stood in the giant pit. His already pale face became even paler. His body trembled and he panted like a bull. He was going crazy. This is not real. Roar. The Qishan Old Ghost roared in anger. The faint and illusory ancient cauldron in his stomach gently vibrated. It had already expanded to the limit that Ji Yufei could control. His ghost body expanded. The Qishan Old Ghost went crazy. His head that was like black mist started to dance wildly. His white dead face turned from white to green, then from green to blue, and finally black. His eyes revealed a murderous glint as he shouted. His huge body suddenly soared into the sky and rushed towards the dozen old monsters in the sky. The Qishan Old Ghost threw caution to the wind. If he was unlucky, then everyone would be unlucky. If he was going to die, then everyone would die together. His huge body was already on the verge of collapse. His entire body was about to crack. Black mist surged out from the cracks on his ghost body. He was like a deflated balloon. This guy. Everyone. Dodge. Old Monster Shenyuan and the other two old men saw this scene and their expressions changed. They then shouted to the crowd. Swoosh. 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 The dozen figures in the sky instantly scattered in all directions. No one dared to let the Qishan Old Ghost get close to them. Everyone could see that the Qishan Old Ghost wanted to drag them to the grave with him. At this moment, Ji Yufei was also going all out. In his inner world, the endless power of the heavens and the earth continued to pour into the mountain and river cauldron. Rumble. The inner world was shaking and shaking. The heaven and earth within a radius of a few hundred feet was completely boiling. The chaotic zone at the edge was collapsing. The void became chaotic again. The mountain and river cauldron that was at the center of the inner world still did not emit any spiritual energy. However, it suddenly shook slightly. Bang! The Qishan Old Ghost, who had soared into the sky, suddenly exploded. This was the self-destruction of a terrifying cultivator that was infinitely close to the demigod realm. The extremely powerful and ferocious energy exploded outwards, causing the entire world to shake violently. After that, an endless amount of black fog and ghostly aura instantly enveloped the world. There were a few rays of light that couldn't escape in time and were instantly engulfed by the ghostly black mist that exuded a gloomy and terrifying aura. Within the ghostly black mist, there were a few extremely horrified roars, and then there was no more sound. The Qishan Old Ghost exploded the Qishan Old Ghost's Shenyin ghost body that he had condensed for thousands of years. The power that was released was extremely terrifying. The mighty power also caused the snow-capped mountains within a radius of 10 miles to collapse. The earth shook violently like waves. In the center of the explosion, the shadow of an ancient cauldron emitted an ancient aura. It floated in the sky. The destructive power that seemed to be able to destroy everything could not shake the shadow of the ancient cauldron. Within the shadow of the ancient cauldron sat a dark-skinned youth. That person was Ji Yufei. His entire body emitted rays of 5-colored divine light. The shadow of the mountain and river cauldron slowly rotated around him, dispelling the endless destructive power that was surging towards Gu Fei. Moreover, the power of the Qi Shan old ghost self-destruction was not so easily dispelled. The terrifying power that was surging towards Gu Fei was completely devoured by the shadow of the ancient cauldron outside his body. At this moment, Gu Fei had already stopped pouring the power of the inner world into the mountain and river cauldron in his inner world. However, the shadow of the ancient cauldron outside his body did not dissipate because of this. The vertical purple mark between his eyebrows was still flickering. It did not close. The inner world formed a mysterious connection with the outside world. The shadow of the inner world kept appearing around Gu Fei's body. Rumble, Gu Fei's inner world was shaking. The collapse of the periphery had stopped. Gu Fei's mind was one with the inner world. He could feel the pulse of a small world. He had a feeling that his inner world would soon be able to directly connect with the outside world and directly appear in the outside world. However, it was still a little short, just a little short. He had a feeling that his strength was not up to par with his will. As long as his cultivation was a little stronger, he would be able to open his inner world. The seventh time his flesh, blood, tendons, and bones were reconstructed slowly. On Gu Fei's body, the five elemental Yuan Qi was vast and mighty. The power of the inner world resonated with him. He was undergoing a transformation that he had yet to complete. 9 by 9 returning to 1 was the extreme. The physical body had 9 revolutions. Blood, flesh, tendons, bones, and even internal organs had to be reconstructed 9 times. Only then could he truly transform into the great perfection realm of the five elements martial body. At this time, even the inner world, the second source of power, was completely mobilized. The shadow of the inner world appeared around Gu Fei's body. Then, with Gu Fei as the center, a great suction force was generated. The essence of the heaven and earth around him, and even the power of the ghost Tao that had exploded, was sucked in. It entered Gu Fei's inner world and the shadow of the ancient cauldron. The huge life essence of the longevity grass, his own five elemental Yuan Qi, the power of the inner world, and the power of the heaven and earth from the outside world were all used by Gu Fei at this moment. Old ghost Qi Shan self-destructed his Xianyin ghost body. Black fog of ghost Qi covered the world, turning the area into a dark and terrifying ghost domain. However, this terrifying scene did not last for long. The Xianyin ghost Qi that covered the world surged violently and gave off a terrifying and eerie aura, retreated like the tide. More than a dozen rays of light stopped in the distance, emitting powerful ripples. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them in shock and anger. Everyone felt their hearts pounding. If they had hesitated just now, they might have really been dragged to the grave by old ghost Qi Shan. Even so, the elders of the three great Taoist sects who could not escape in time were affected by the terrifying power of old ghost Qi Shan's self-destruction and completely died. After the Xianyin ghost Qi retreated, a few scattered white bones and fragments of magic treasures could be faintly seen on the ground. Those fragments were still emitting a cold light. A few extremely powerful cultivators at the ninth heaven of the void controlling realm had died just like that. Even their nascent souls could not escape. This made people feel how fragile life was. If one did not become an immortal, they were still ants. An endless amount of worldly essence gathered from all directions. Very soon, the terrifying abstruse yin ghost Qi that enveloped the world was completely devoured by the illusory world around Gu Fei and the ancient cauldron. Roar! Little bastard, I will remember this. Suddenly, a fleeting and gloomy voice resounded in the sky. After that, an extremely faint figure that seemed like a wisp of smoke and mist appeared 50 kilometers away. Old ghost Qi Shan? He still didn't die. When old monster Shenyuan and the others heard the voice and saw the figure, they could not help but be shocked. However, they immediately felt that old ghost Qi Shan's aura was very weak. His body also seemed to be very unstable. He could only barely form a body that was like a black mist. The old monsters of the three great Taoist sects immediately understood. Old ghost Qi Shan was clearly seriously injured. Even if his soul did not dissipate on the spot, he was half dead. Kill him. While his weak, Destroy his spirit so that he can't even become a ghost. The elders of the three great Taoist sects immediately leaped into the air and flew toward old ghost Qi Shan with murderous intent. Looking at their momentum, it seemed that they would not rest until they killed old ghost Qi Shan. Want to kill me? You juniors don't have the qualifications. Old ghost Qi Shan sneered. The next moment, his illusory figure that seemed like it could dissipate at any time disappeared into the void and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 416. No one could clearly see how he had escaped. He had clearly used some sort of secret technique to escape. However, everyone knew very well that this old ghost Qi Shan would most likely not dare to step out of Mount Qi for the next few hundred years. The few elders who had rushed towards old ghost Qi Shan were immediately startled when they saw this. They stopped in their tracks and stopped in the void. They used their divine senses to sweep in all directions. In the end, they found nothing. Old ghost Qi Shan seemed to have really disappeared into thin air. Damn it! This is preposterous. The few elders were filled with hatred, but there was nothing they could do. The few experts who had just died in the Xianyin ghost Qi were their fellow disciples or good friends. Boom! At this moment, a violent tremor could be heard. An ancient aura that seemed to originate from the primordial world spread out and spread across the heavens and earth. All the cultivators who sensed this aura were shocked beyond belief, especially the old monsters of the three great Daoist sects. They were all dumbfounded. Everyone's gaze was attracted to an ancient cauldron. To be more accurate, it was not a real ancient cauldron, but an illusion of an ancient cauldron. Within the illusion of the ancient cauldron sat a dark-skinned youth. Vaguely, a hazy void appeared around the body of the youth in the cauldron. Ji Fei sat cross-legged in the illusion of the ancient cauldron. The power of the inner world, the essence of the heaven and earth that had gathered from all directions, and his own martial artist Yuan Qi, these three powers interacted and merged in his body. In addition to the large amount of life essence that had been refined from the leaf of the longevity grass, the current Ji Fei was like a pill that was constantly being refined by the four powers in the cauldron. Using the mountain and river cauldron as a cauldron and using his own body as medicine to refine his treasured body, it could be said that no one had ever done such a crazy thing before. Before Ji Fei, no one had ever done such a thing. The illusion of the ancient cauldron stabilized the void. The life essence, the spiritual energy of the heaven and earth, and the power of the inner world, these three vast powers were gradually refined into Ji Fei's martial artist Yuan Qi, which flowed through his limbs and bones. His body instantly glowed as if it was cast from five-colored divine iron. The increasingly vigorous and powerful quintessence of a five-element martial artist washed Ji Fei's body over and over again, causing his flesh, internal organs, tendons, and bones to become inconceivably tough. The seventh reconstitution of his flesh, blood, tendons, and bones was progressing slowly. It was a long process. Outside of the ancient cauldron's shadow, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth gradually formed a vortex of spiritual qi visible to the naked eye. Spiritual qi gathered from all directions, causing the surrounding spiritual qi to become thicker. Although old monster Shenyuan and the others wanted the longevity grass very much, at this moment, no one was willing to go forward. This was because they could already see that the ancient cauldron outside of Ji Fei's body was extraordinary. From the words of old monster Qi Shan, they knew that the ancient cauldron shadow that enveloped Ji Fei should be the mountain and river cauldron. It was the magic treasure that had destroyed old monster Qi Shan's Xianyin ghost body. Even these old monsters knew very little about the mountain and river cauldron. They had only seen a few words about it in the ancient books. Perhaps only the powerful people of the ancient times knew the origin of the mountain and river cauldron. Endless spiritual energy gathered, and the void in the ancient cauldron became clearer, as if it could really appear at any time. Time passed slowly. Ji Fei, who was sitting cross-legged in the ancient cauldron shadow, was already numb. However, he could still feel a strange power surging through his body. It slowly flowed through his body, cleansing every inch of his flesh and blood. It gradually nourished his body, causing his constitution to continuously improve and his body to become stronger. This time, the five elements' true essence still cleansed his body, nourishing every inch of his body and improving his constitution. In addition, there was another change that Jiu Fei did not expect. At the same time that his constitution improved, the terrifying pain of the reorganization of his flesh and blood also tempered his mind. From the looks of it, Jiu Fei would not be able to stop in a short period of time. When old monster Shenyuan and the other elders of the three great Daoist sects saw this situation, they had a simple discussion. Then, they worked together to carve runes in all directions and set up aura-shielding formations to seal off the surrounding area. They did not want too many people to know that Jiu Fei was here. They did not want to cause trouble, because this was the Northern Lands. Even powerful ancient beings had appeared in the Northern Lands, so they had to be careful. Whether they could obtain the longevity grass or not, Jiu Fei was the key. Old monster Shenyuan and the others did not mind waiting a little longer, but they had to ensure that nothing happened to Jiu Fei. However, during the battle with old monster Qi Shan, old monster Shenyuan and the others had inevitably alarmed the peerless experts of other forces. They had come to watch. The news could no longer be completely sealed off. It was only a matter of time before others found this place. Old monster Shenyuan and the others were not worried, because as long as it was not a peerless demigod expert, no one could do anything to Jiu Fei in the mountain and river cauldron. Jiu Fei was basically in seclusion, but he was under the protection of a group of peerless experts at the 9th layer of the void controlling realm. With so many peerless experts protecting him, it was a very spectacular and proud sight. Time passed. Although old monster Shenyuan and the others had carved runes in the nearby area to isolate the aura of the area, there were still more and more peerless experts appearing in the vicinity. However, whether it was the experts of other forces or the rogue cultivators without a sect, none of them were willing to provoke the three great Dao sects. Especially when they saw the figures of old monster Shenyuan and the others in the three great Dao sects, these people became even more cautious and did not want to get close. 2 days, 3 days, 10 days had passed. Jiu Fei had actually been continuously gathering the spiritual energy of the world for 10 consecutive days. The spiritual energy of the world that he had gathered had caused the spiritual energy of the surrounding area to be vast and mighty. The density of the spiritual energy was already comparable to a spiritual land. However, Jiu Fei did not seem to have any intention of stopping. After absorbing the endless spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the shadow of the mountain and river cauldron that enveloped Jiu Fei became more and more clear. During this period of time, one of the three elders with the highest cultivation levels of the three great Dao sects seemed to have become impatient and wanted to make a move to stop Jiu Fei. However, when the old man took out 9 blue pearls and threw them at the shadow of the ancient cauldron around Jiu Fei, the powerful blue pearls that shook the void didn't even touch the ancient cauldron shadow before they were blown away. The old man suffered a great impact and spat out a mouthful of blood. Cracks actually appeared on the 9 aqua-blue pearls. After the old man tried to test the waters, no one else made a move. Everyone knew that the old man was the same as old monster Shenyuan. He was only a step away from breaking through to the demigod realm and becoming a terrifying cultivator of eternal life. Such a cultivator was very powerful. He could be said to be an invincible expert below the demigod realm. Among those present, no one's cultivation level could beat the old man. Since even the old man was affected by the impact, his body was injured, and his magic treasure was almost destroyed, how could anyone else dare to make a move? Another 5 days passed. At noon on the 6th day, the void near Jiu Fei suddenly collapsed. Then, a tall figure walked out of the shattered void. "I can feel the aura of the mountain and river cauldron," the person said after walking out of the void. When old monster Shenyuan and the others saw the void shatter and a person walk out of it, they were shocked. A person who could shatter the void was more terrifying than a demigod or even a real immortal god. When old monster Shenyuan and the others saw this person, they were shocked to the extreme. This person was no stranger to them. He was the terrifying extreme grade warrior who had shattered the void when the ancient devil was born. Fresh blood seemed to be seeping out of the bloody hole in his chest. He was still full of domineering aura. As soon as he appeared, his domineering aura caused everyone to feel suffocated. No one dared to step forward or make a sound. They all looked at the middle-aged man from afar. The middle-aged man did not deliberately reveal any aura, but everyone felt a great pressure. What? The middle-aged man was surprised when he saw Ji Yufei sitting cross-legged in the void with an ancient cauldron rotating slowly around him. Warrior. There are actually real warriors in this world. It's really surprising. I'm not alone. The middle-aged man's eyes suddenly lit up. After saying that, the middle-aged man actually sat cross-legged in the void, closed his eyes, and remained motionless. He seemed to be talking to Ji Yufei. Originally, the experts of the other forces were thinking about how to disturb Ji Yufei's cultivation, so that Ji Yufei could not continue cultivating. But now, they had no choice but to give up on this idea. This mysterious middle-aged man had the terrifying strength to fight against the ancient devil. Even a demigod might not be able to withstand a single blow from him. No one would go forward to die when they clearly knew that they were no match for him. Such a person was not brave, but stupid, and extremely stupid. Another 10 days passed. Ji Yufei's flesh, blood, tendons, and bones surged with bursts of 5-colored divine light. His entire body's bones had been branded with 5 colors, sparkling and translucent like 5-colored divine jade. His physical body had undergone a complete transformation, and his soul consciousness had become even more condensed, almost able to materialize. Warriors were different from other cultivators. They did not refine their primordial spirit or nascent soul. Instead, they directly refined their divine soul, pointing directly to the origin of life. The stronger the spirit, the stronger the divine soul. Cultivators had primordial spirits, but warriors also had divine souls. The manifestation of spirit was a kind of external manifestation of the divine soul. In addition, Ji Yufei's body, under the endless heaven and earth essence and the vast power of life, was transforming. His physique was improving, and his skin was glowing. The purple mark between Ji Yufei's eyebrows gradually turned into a purple flame mark, imprinting itself on the skull beneath his skin. This purple flame mark, the size of a fingernail, emitted a powerful spiritual force. This was the divine soul mark, the flame of the soul. As long as the martial artist's divine soul was not extinguished, they would not truly die. After the mysterious middle-aged man arrived, no one dared to make the slightest movement, and no one dared to approach Ji Yufei. The ancient cauldron revolved, and endless heaven and earth spiritual energy gathered. The last 3 reconstructions of his flesh and blood took a great deal of time. Another half a month passed. One evening, Ji Yufei, who was sitting cross-legged in the void in the faint ancient cauldron phantom, suddenly trembled. His bones crackled, and his flesh, tendons, and bones constantly trembled. His internal organs were shaken, and his entire body was in excruciating pain. He clenched his teeth, enduring this purgatory-like torment. However, in a flash, he understood that this was the transformation of being reborn. The previous reconstructions of his flesh and blood were not essentially a new life. Only now, his flesh, internal organs, and bones were undergoing the final transformation. Ji Yufei was about to completely shed his mortal body. This was a different kind of rebirth, a true rebirth. Chapter 4:17. The illusion of the mountain and river cauldron enveloped Ji Yufei's body, gathering endless heaven and earth spiritual energy, the power of the heavens and the earth, the origin energy of his flesh and blood, and the vast essence energy of his life. All of these energies converged on Ji Yufei's body, causing Ji Yufei's body to enter the final stage of transformation. After his bones were washed by the endless energy, they became like 5-colored divine jade. His bones were hard to an unimaginable degree, comparable to a spirit treasure or divine weapon. His internal organs were also tempered until they were flawless, without a single trace of impurities. His skin and flesh were sparkling and full of luster, almost transparent, sparkling with a brilliant light. Rumble, 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 the heavens and earth shook. Beams of spiritual light that could be seen with the naked eye gathered from all directions, causing the sky to seem as if it was filled with celestial energy. Ji Yufei's body shined brilliantly. Strange psychic energy turned into a stream that entered the purple flame mark between his eyebrows, causing a purple divine light to shine. As his body transformed, Ji Yufei's psychic energy also increased. It formed a soul flame that was branded into the skull between Ji Yufei's eyebrows. Martial artists did not cultivate the nascent soul or nascent soul. They walked a different path. Essence energy tempered the soul, which was the source of life. What martial artists cultivated was the soul. Martial artists who cultivated successfully not only had extremely powerful bodies, comparable to a spirit treasure or divine weapon, but their souls were also incomparably powerful. As long as their souls were not destroyed, even if their bodies were smashed into millions of pieces, they could still be reborn. Only by using a special method to obliterate the soul could a martial artist be killed. Even if the soul was obliterated, the martial artist's body would not decay, and the martial body would not be destroyed. The mysterious man sitting in the void nearby had already opened his eyes when the void began to tremble. He stared at Jiu Fei without any expression on his face. Even further away, the old monsters of the three great Daoist sects were watching. No one dared to approach. This mysterious middle-aged man was powerful to an unimaginable degree. He was a terrifying character that could compete with the ancient demon kings. No one was willing to provoke such a monstrous character. More and more cultivators were rushing over after receiving the news. Among them, the figures of the demon clan and demonic Dao cultivators began to appear in the distance. Everyone was watching. They did not know why the mysterious middle-aged man would pay attention to Jiu Fei, a small cultivator who had not yet broken through to the realm of a peerless expert. However, regardless of whether it was the people from the three great Daoist sects or the other powers, regardless of what sort of feelings they all had one thing in common: they all had their own misgivings. After another 7 days, a rare phenomenon began to appear around Jiu Fei. The illusionary figure of the mountain and river cauldron covering his body began to vibrate. Within the illusory figure, thunder rumbled, and at the same time, a 5-colored divine rainbow shot out. At this moment, Jiu Fei's body was about to complete the final transformation. His flesh, blood, tendons, bones, and internal organs were all glowing. Every part of his body was surging with vast 5-elemental yuan qi. Within his flesh, blood, tendons, bones, and internal organs, beams of 5-colored light flashed like 5-colored divine lightning. Rumble. A sound like that of a tsunami, like that of thunder, rang out from within his body. The purple flame brand between his eyebrows emitted a brilliant divine light that connected to the outside world. Within the illusionary figure of the ancient cauldron, a hazy shadow in the void began to become clear. Jiu Fei's inner world was actually showing signs of appearing in the outside world. Vast energy fluctuations caused the entire world to tremble. Finally, an endless 5-colored divine light shone from Jiu Fei's body, illuminating the world. It was as if some kind of shackle within Jiu Fei's body had been broken. Roar. Jiu Fei threw his head back and let out a long roar. The endless 5-colored divine light was dazzling, as if a 5-colored sun had appeared between the heavens and the earth. At this time, it was nighttime, and the surrounding area was bathed in the 5-colored divine light. Energy fluctuations as vast as the sea spread out in all directions. The runes that the old eccentrics of the three great Daoist sects had carved in the surrounding area were also affected. The mysterious runes that had been hidden under the ground suddenly emerged from the ground, shining with bright spiritual light. The runes formed a spell formation, and it blocked the powerful aura and yuan qi fluctuations that emanated from Jiu Fei's body. Jiu Fei's roar echoed throughout the world. Then, Jiu Fei's body was like a bottomless black hole. The speed at which he absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth increased by at least 10 times. Boom! In an instant, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within a radius of dozens of miles was completely devoured by Jiu Fei's body. Countless cries of surprise could be heard nearby, and figures fell from the sky. Those who fell from the sky were the peerless experts who had been watching nearby. Even old monster Shenyuan and the other cultivators at the peak of the 9th heaven of the void-controlling realm felt that they could not borrow any strength and fell from the sky. In an instant, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within a radius of dozens of miles was devoured by Jiu Fei. It was as if the surrounding dozens of miles had suddenly become a spiritual energy vacuum. The peerless experts who were watching nearby could not feel the existence of the energy drifting in the air, causing them to lose the ability to fly, and one by one, they fell from the sky. Only the mysterious middle-aged man was still able to sit cross-legged near Ji Yufei, watching Ji Yufei's every move. He was the closest to Ji Yufei, but he did not seem to be affected in the slightest. The reason why the cultivators of the void-controlling realm could fly in the air was because of their perception of the heaven and earth, and their ability to merge with the spiritual energy drifting in the air. The relationship between the cultivators of the void-controlling realm and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was like the relationship between fish and water. If they lost the water, could the fish still swim? The answer was simple: they could not. If they lost the spiritual energy drifting in the air, could the cultivators still fly in the air? The answer was, they could not. Only when their perception of the heaven and earth rose to the half-god realm, could they completely rely on their own strength to move unhindered in the world, flying in the sky and burrowing into the ground. After absorbing the extremely dense spiritual energy of heaven and earth within a radius of dozens of miles, the life essence surged, and the blood, flesh, tendons, bones, and internal organs in Ji Yufei's body were completely reborn. His inner breath surged like a long river, like the roar of thunder, and like the surging of a stormy sea. The sound coming from Ji Yufei's body was so loud that it could be heard from far away. His internal organs were like thunder from the ninth heaven, and his bones were exploding. The snow-white jade-like color completely faded away, and the bones turned into a colorful color. Each of them was crystal clear, and at the same time, they were constantly vibrating. Although the internal injuries that he had suffered in the past had long been healed, but this time, his body was reborn, and he had gone through a round of tempering. There were no more hidden dangers in his body. His entire body was free of dust and dirt, completely reborn. This time, the transformation lasted for almost 2 months, and only then did Ji Yufei completely wake up. The yuan qi in his body was surging, and his inner breath was endless. This time, it could be said that Ji Yufei had truly experienced a rebirth. His physique had a qualitative improvement, and his body was many times stronger than before. Good. I'll lend you a hand. The mysterious middle-aged man stood up in the void, and then disappeared. The next moment, he appeared beside Ji Yufei. Although the shadow of the cauldron of mountains and rivers possessed unfathomable power, it seemed to have no effect on the mysterious middle-aged man. It could not stop the middle-aged man at all. The sudden approach of the middle-aged man surprised Ji Yufei. Then, he saw the middle-aged man stretch out his right hand, and his index finger pointed directly at Ji Yufei's brow. The tip of his finger faintly emitted a faint purple light. What is he trying to do? Ji Yufei's face changed drastically. He had just undergone a true metamorphosis, and his physique had undergone a sublimation. However, this middle-aged man's strength had reached an unimaginable level. Even if Ji Yufei's cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds, he would definitely not be a match for the other party. In front of this middle-aged man, Ji Yufei did not even have the slightest ability to fight back. He had already recognized this middle-aged man. This middle-aged man was the indestructible body that he had seen in the cave under the icy azure pool at Taishen Mountain. He did not know why this middle-aged man suddenly attacked him, so he wanted to avoid the middle-aged man's index finger that was pointing at his brow. However, he was surprised to find that he had a feeling that he could not avoid it. It seemed like an ordinary finger, but he could not avoid it. The middle-aged man's right hand directly broke through the colorful light around Ji Yufei's body, and his finger pointed at the purple flame mark between Ji Yufei's eyebrows. Ji Yufei suddenly felt dizzy. It was as if in an instant, the world had been turned upside down. His vision went black, and he almost fainted. He vaguely felt as if something had melted into his divine consciousness, and was imprinted in his heart. Then, his head hurt, and countless information exploded in his mind. It almost made his head explode, and it made Ji Yufei feel a sense of expansion. Countless information seemed to have melted into his memory, filling in the blanks in his memory, and becoming a part of him that he could not forget. I will pass you the mark of the Great Way. Comprehend it well. The mysterious middle-aged man's voice sounded in Ji Yufei's heart. He did not know how much time had passed. It seemed like a moment, but it also seemed like countless years. The inheritance of the Great Way made Ji Yufei's thoughts a little chaotic. Except for Ji Yufei, no one heard the words of the mysterious middle-aged man, and no one knew what had happened. Everyone only saw that the colorful light that was emitted from Ji Yufei's body began to gradually weaken, and finally, it was completely absorbed into his body. His body, no longer absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. The group of embarrassed peerless masters, once again controlled the escape light, flew from the ground to the sky. They were shocked to see that the mysterious middle-aged man was pointing at the center of Ji Yufei's eyebrows. There was a strange fluctuation where the finger came into contact with Ji Yufei's eyebrows, and there was a purple light lingering around it. The surging power on Ji Yufei's body was calming down. Everyone felt that the aura on Ji Yufei's body had changed, and his body naturally emitted a powerful aura. A peerless master, he actually broke through? Unbelievable, he was just a small cultivator at the sixth heaven of the ascended realm before. Unbelievable, how is this possible? How did he do it? At this time, whether it was the old monsters of the three great Daoist sects or the peerless masters of the other forces, they all felt something strange about Ji Yufei. They were extremely shocked, because Ji Yufei's cultivation had actually broken through to the void controlling realm. Chapter 4:18. Ji Yufei's cultivation naturally broke through to the void controlling realm after his physical body completed a true transformation. The cultivation of a martial artist was different from others. Endless spiritual energy tempered his physical body, allowing Ji Yufei to usher in a new life. At this time, the mysterious middle-aged man transmitted a supreme great Tao imprint into his heart. The mysterious middle-aged man's body emitted an indescribable aura. Those who felt this aura all changed their expressions. At this moment, they seemed to have sensed the great Tao in the dark. The mysterious middle-aged man seemed to have become the incarnation of the great Tao. The middle-aged man's index finger on the soul fire imprint on Ji Yufei's eyebrows emitted a dazzling purple divine light. Ji Yufei's expression seemed to be in pain and happiness at the same time. No one knew what he was going through at this moment. A strange power was transmitted from the mysterious middle-aged man's right index finger into Ji Yufei's sea of consciousness and imprinted in his heart. It was as if he suddenly understood many things, but when he wanted to figure out what it was as if he didn't understand anything at all. The great Tao imprint was extremely mysterious. It was condensed from the supreme martial Tao. With Ji Yufei's current cultivation, it was difficult to comprehend it. He could only slowly comprehend and digest it. Tao, what was the Tao? The immortal Tao was also a Tao, the devil Tao was also a Tao, the demon Tao was also a Tao, the ghost Tao was also a Tao. There were countless grand Taos, but cultivators that had truly condensed a brand of the grand Tao were existences that were as rare as phoenix feathers and Chilean horns even during the great era that was filled with experts during the ancient times. Such people were all extreme experts, the most powerful people in the world. The mysterious middle-aged man was inheriting the martial Tao. He directly imprinted the great Tao imprint on Ji Yufei's heart. After an hour, the middle-aged man's index finger that was on Ji Yufei's forehead gradually faded. At this time, he heaved a sigh of relief. However, the moment the middle-aged man's index finger left Ji Yufei's forehead, a boom sound was heard. The void above his head suddenly collapsed, and endless demonic chi surged out. A devil well appeared within the devil chi, exuding boundless devil might that shook the heavens and earth as it descended toward the middle-aged man and Ji Yufei. That devil well was the evil devil well in Primitive Fire Demon's inner world. Primitive Fire Demon's inner world was destroyed by the peerless expert who walked out of the Tai Chi yin-yang diagram, but that devil well rushed out and flew away. Die. Ha ha. The primordial fire demon's voice came from the well and reverberated between heaven and earth. The evil well exuded an unparalleled ferocious aura. Like 100,000 mountains crashing down, it instantly sealed a part of the world. Endless evil power spread out, and cracks in space spread out like a spiderweb. It was as if the void had been broken like a mirror. Everyone was stunned by this sudden turn of events. The ancient devil that had escaped from the earthfire vein was still alive. Roar. The mysterious middle-aged man was shocked and angry at the same time. He raised his head and roared. Then, he punched upwards with both fists. Rumble. The powerful force directly shattered the cracked void and turned into a mass of chaos, surging towards Mo Jingxi, who was descending from the sky. Bang! The devil well directly shattered the chaos in the void, as if it was not blocked at all. It continued to descend toward the middle-aged man and Ji Yufei. Ji Yufei sensed great danger. He was suddenly awakened from his mysterious state of mind. Then, he saw the devil well descending like 100,000 ancient demonic mountains, and his expression changed dramatically. Even though he had broken through to the void controlling realm, Ji Yufei still felt as fragile as an ant under the devil well. If the devil well really descended, he would be smashed to pieces. Your body is not bad. I want it. Endless demonic chi surged out of the devil well. The voice of the primordial fire demon was heard from the devil well. The middle-aged man did not speak. He only sneered. He had survived through hundreds of trials and was only left with a strand of his soul to control his body. Even so, he did not panic in the face of danger, and his expression did not change. He grabbed Ji Yufei with one hand, then punched open the void that was sealed by the devil well and threw Ji Yufei out. By the time he threw Ji Yufei out, the demonic well had already arrived above his head. You want my body? The middle-aged man looked up at the evil devil well. Fine. Then I'll give it to you. Two beams of divine light shot out of his eyes, as if they could pierce through the void and look into the depths of the devil well. Then, his entire body began to shine with heavenly light. As if he was on fire, every inch of his skin and every piece of his bones began to shine with heavenly light. Terrifying energy began to pour out of his body. Boom! With a loud quake, the void around the middle-aged man was instantly shattered by the terrifying power and turned into a chaotic mess. He used all the power contained in his body without holding anything back. He shot up into the sky. Everywhere he went, the void shattered. He rushed directly into the devil well. The evil devil well shook violently. Ah! You! An angry roar came from the devil well. Rumble! Terrifying power waves came from the devil well. The devil well shook again and again as if there was a terrifying heavenly beast trying to break out of the devil well. When the crowd saw this shocking scene, they were all dumbfounded. No one had expected that the evil well would suddenly appear here. Ji Yufei, who had been thrown by the middle-aged man, felt as if he was riding on a cloud. His body flew several miles away before he could stabilize himself. Boom! Another loud sound came from the devil well. Endless divine light penetrated the walls of the devil well, pierced through the void, and shot in all directions. Swoosh! In the distance, a snow-capped mountain that stood tall on the ground was swept by the divine light. Immediately, like snow under the sun, it silently disappeared from the world. A few unlucky fellows who were watching from afar were swept by the divine light. They didn't even have the chance to scream before their souls dissipated in an instant. Everyone turned pale with fright, and they hurriedly controlled their streaks of light to retreat into the distance. Ah! You want to perish together with me? Dream on. The devil well shook violently as if it could collapse at any time. Terrifying turbulence of energy spewed out from the well. Specks of divine light twinkled like billions of stars. The primordial fire demon's voice reverberated between heaven and earth. He seemed to be in great danger. Endless devil chi seeped out from the devil well and enveloped the world. The evil and terrifying aura made all the cultivators tremble with fear. The devil well was too mysterious and terrifying. No one knew where the pitch-black mouth led to. Waves of vast demonic essence erupted from the demonic well, gradually suppressing the power that erupted from the middle-aged man who rushed into the demonic well. The middle-aged man's aura was domineering. However, he was not at his peak. His body and divine soul had suffered unimaginable damage. He should have died back then. He was only summoned by the sound of the heaven-shaking war drum. A wisp of his soul that had yet to dissipate awakened and temporarily took control of his body to fight against the ancient demon. Even with the immortal flame body and the last burst of power from his body, it couldn't destroy the devil well. However, just as the primordial fire demon was about to completely destroy the middle-aged man's power with the devil's well, the surrounding space suddenly shattered. A few terrifying figures that resembled gods and demons walked out of the shattered space. Die, demon! Ghost Emperor Fengdu's voice resounded. Then, a pitch-black ghostly hand the size of a mountain condensed in the void and directly grabbed at the devil well in the sky. Then, a Tai Chi yin and yang diagram flew over from the north. A terrifying aura surged and shook the world. Damn it, using numbers to win, despicable. The primordial fire demon's angry and unwilling words came from the devil well. Then, he controlled the devil well and directly shattered the void, escaping into the void. Endless devil chi retreated like a tide. The terrifying evil aura was quickly fading. The ancient demon saw that the situation was not good and immediately fled. The pitch-black ghostly hand, which was as large as a mountain, directly tore apart the void. However, it was no longer able to stop the demonic well. Chase. The terrifying figures that walked out from the void immediately shattered the void and chased after the ancient demon. The Tai Chi yin and yang diagram also disappeared into the void. An ancient demon like the primordial fire demon was difficult to kill. Although the peerless expert that walked out of the Tai Chi yin and yang diagram destroyed the primordial fire demon's inner world and destroyed his body, the primordial fire demon's primordial spirit merged with the devil well and escaped. The terrifying experts all left, but the cultivators nearby could not recover from the shock for a long time. No one had thought that such a thing would happen. No one knew why the devil's well had suddenly appeared. That mysterious middle-aged man had rushed into the devil's well and was most likely already dead. That devil's well was simply too strange and evil. Ji Yufei. Someone suddenly shouted. Then, the people of the three great Daoist sects immediately recovered and looked at Ji Yufei, who was standing in the void. Swoosh. A sword light filled the sky. Old monster Shenyuan was the first to use the sword light and rushed towards Ji Yufei. He was extremely excited. He had to get the longevity grass from Ji Yufei. All the old monsters of the three great Daoist sects looked at Ji Yufei with excitement and fanaticism, as if they had seen the most precious treasure in the world. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. More than a dozen figures with powerful fluctuations rushed towards Ji Yufei. Ji Yufei, who had just woken up, was shocked. Before he could react, he was surrounded by those old monsters. Ji Yufei, I am Taoist Qi of the Taishen sect. I am of the same generation as your grandmaster's grandmaster. Come back to the Taishen sect with me. Taoist Qi smiled happily. The wrinkles on her face were like ravines. She approached Ji Yufei with a bright smile and reached out to grab Ji Yufei's shoulder. Taoist Qi. What do you mean by this? Old monster Shenyuan and the old monsters of the Shangqing sect were not willing. The Taishen sect wanted to take the longevity grass for themselves. No way. The old monsters of the Guangqing celestial sect and the Shangqing sect all moved forward. They would not let Ji Yufei leave so easily. Chapter 419. More than a dozen old monsters blocked Ji Yufei and the elders of the Taishen sect in the sky. It seemed impossible for Ji Yufei to easily leave. Even Qi Daopao's expression changed at this time. It should be known that these old guys wanted to live forever and break through to the demigod realm. They were crazy about it. No one wanted to die when their lifespan was exhausted. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, these old monsters would do anything to extend their lifespan. The longer people lived, the more they were afraid of death. No one wanted to die. Shenyuan fellow, Ji Yufei is a disciple of the Taishen sect. If we want to take him back to the sect, do we need your approval? Qi Daopao's expression was a little ugly. At this time, 3 old Taoist priests had already protected Ji Yufei. These 3 old men were elders of the Taishen sect who had not been involved in worldly affairs for a long time. Even Ji Yufei had never seen these 3 elders of the sect before. Including Qi Daopao, there were only 4 peerless masters of the Taishen sect present, but there were more than a dozen elders of the Shangqing sect and the Guangqing celestial sect. Qi Daopao, you and I both know that there is no need to be so clear. It is impossible for the Taishen sect to monopolize that thing. Old monster Shenyuan stood on a golden sword light, his white hair fluttering in the wind. He looked coldly at Qi Daopao with a faint smile on his face. The 3 great sects are of the same breath. The Taishen sect should not go too far, said another old man. He was one of the 3 masters who had dared to directly attack old monster Qi Shan. Seeing old monster Shen Yuan and the old man approaching her, even Qi Daopao's expression changed. Old monster Shen Yuan and the old man's cultivation was above hers. Qi Daopao knew that she had no chance of winning against any one of them. Old monster Shen Yuan and the old man were already half a step into the demigod realm. However, they were also facing the predicament of their lifespan coming to an end. The longevity grass was the only hope they could grasp. It was a matter of life and death. If they wanted to take away Ji Yufei in front of them, it would definitely not be an easy task. Moreover, there were over a dozen old monsters eyeing them like tigers watching their prey. Daopo Chi cursed inwardly. She didn't think that the 4 of them could contend against over a dozen old monsters. Under the protection of the 3 elders, Ji Yufei's expression remained calm as he watched everything coldly. With his current cultivation, he was still unable to contend against these elders. However, if he were to escape, perhaps no one here would be able to stop him. He was wondering if he should test his strength after his transformation. These people wanted the longevity grass. Therefore, even if he broke out of the encirclement, they would not dare to kill him. After all, only he knew where the longevity grass was. Ha ha ha. Thinking of this, Ji Yufei suddenly laughed out loud 3 times, and then swoosh. His figure blurred, and at a speed that was hard to discern with the naked eye, he left behind an afterimage as he soared into the sky. No one thought that Ji Yufei would suddenly rush out. Everyone was stunned for a moment. However, it was this hesitation that allowed Ji Yufei to rush out of the encirclement. In an instant, Ji Yufei soared more than 100 feet and then took large strides in the void. Swoosh. His figure blurred again. In the next moment, before the afterimage dissipated, he had already appeared several hundred feet away. Cultivators in the Imperial Void Realm could soar into the sky and travel between heaven and earth. However, warriors in the Imperial Void Realm were even more terrifying. Ji Yufei used the desolate steps. It was as if he was teleporting. He ran in the void at an extremely fast speed. Chase. Don't let him escape. Be careful, don't hurt him. Just stop him. When everyone came back to their senses, they shouted as they rode on their escape lights and chased after Ji Yufei. Some of them did not forget to remind everyone that if Ji Yufei was hurt, it would not be good. Ha ha. Ji Yufei laughed out loud, and a 5-colored aura came out of his body. A majestic power that was as heavy as a mountain surged out from his body. He seemed to have turned into a 5-colored rainbow, quickly crossing the sky. The powerful aura frightened the beasts along the way, and they roared continuously. The birds and beasts in the mountains, after sensing the aura on Ji Yufei's body, felt very uneasy. The feeling of flying in the sky was so refreshing. Ji Yufei only felt that his body seemed to have merged with the void. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth passed through his body. He was like a fish in the water, flying wherever he wanted to go, and flying however he wanted to fly. The world allowed him to roam freely. At this moment, Ji Yufei felt that his future was no longer dark. The path of martial arts was not a path of no return. In particular, he had obtained the martial arts imprint, which allowed him to refer to the path that the predecessors had taken and continue to move forward. He would not stop here. The supreme martial way was not a dream. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Ji Yufei moved a few hundred feet with a single step. Although it seemed like he was taking a stroll in the air, every single step he took covered a few hundred feet. It was as if he was teleporting at an extremely fast speed. This speed was faster than the escape light of martial cultivators. Although he had just broken through to the void controlling realm, in terms of speed, there were already few people who could match him. It had to be said that the desolate steps, this set of ancient mysterious skills, was really mysterious and unpredictable. With the improvement of his cultivation, at this time, Ji Yufei could be considered to have just started. He was very expectant. This mysterious skill might really have the power to travel across the untainted land in 8 steps. If the rumors were true, then who in the world could catch up with Ji Yufei? Buzz. The sword light vibrated, and a golden sword light, like a dazzling golden meteor, chased from behind Ji Yufei. The incomparably sharp sword chi surged in the high sky. Ji Fei, stop. Old monster Shen Yuan said directly. Humph. Ji Fei sneered. He paid no attention to Shen Yuan eccentric's words, and he continued to fly towards the south. Stop. Only an idiot would stop. Ji Fei was not an idiot. Of course, he would not stop. Behind old monster Shen Yuan, there were 2 escape lights that were not weaker than old monster Xuanyuan's. They chased closely. In the void further away, there were more than 10 escape lights flashing. From the speed of the escape lights, it could be seen that the cultivation of the old monsters of the 3 great Taoist sects was uneven. Old monster Shen Yuan of the Guangqing Immortal sect was undoubtedly the one with the highest cultivation among them. The other 2 old men's cultivation was also on par with old monster Xuanyuan's. However, the speed of the sword light of the flying sword was much faster than that of ordinary flying methods. Even so, old monster Shen Yuan could not get rid of the 2 escape lights behind him, and Ji Fei could not get rid of old monster Shen Yuan either. As a result, a spectacular scene appeared in the sky. More than 10 escape lights, as dazzling as divine rainbows, with powerful Dharma power fluctuations, flashed across the void. Without any disguise, the escape lights illuminated the world. Behind the escape lights, some peerless experts of other sects also followed. Among them, some were just there to watch the show, while some had ulterior motives. Soon, Ji Fei, old monster Shen Yuan, and the others disappeared under the sky. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. On the mountainside of a snowy mountain in the north, there was a pitch-black cave, from which a faint light could be seen. From time to time, the cold wind whistled past, sweeping up snowflakes. Deep inside the cave, there was a weak fluctuation of Dharma power, indicating that there were cultivators cultivating inside. The cave was very bright, because there was a pearl embedded in the stone wall at the top of the cave that emitted a soft light. The cave was not big, with a radius of only a few dozen feet. On a stone platform in the middle of the cave, a white-robed young man sat cross-legged. The young man was unusually handsome, with eyes like cold stars, and sword-like eyebrows. It could be said that he was a handsome man with an elegant demeanor. In the hand of the white-robed young man, there was a transparent crystal ball the size of a fist. Inside the crystal ball, there was a figure the size of a thumb. The crystal ball was engraved with mysterious talismans, and each talisman lit up. The small figure inside the crystal ball was struggling violently, as if it wanted to break out. Dongfang Chen, what do you want? Hurry up and let me out. An old voice came out of the crystal ball like a mosquito. Hehe, old hag, save your strength. This god-devouring pearl is used to capture nascent soul. Unless I let you out, otherwise, no matter how strong your nascent soul is, it will be difficult to break out of the seal. The white-robed young man said with a gloomy smile. God-devouring pearl? This is a magic treasure of the Devil Dao. How did you get it? Did you actually risk the world's condemnation and fall into the Devil Dao? In the crystal ball held by the young man, the small figure had stopped and said in surprise. Me. It doesn't matter if I'm a god or a devil, as long as I can become stronger, even if I fall into the Devil Dao, it's not impossible. The white-robed young man's eyes suddenly revealed a fierce look, and he said viciously. Dongfang Chen. You trapped me, are you going to? The figure trapped in the crystal ball said in a frightened voice. That's right, after refining you, my cultivation should be able to break through to the void controlling realm. The white-robed young man said coldly, and a cruel smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. You're crazy, as a descendant of the Dongfang family, how can you do such a thing that angers people and gods? Aren't you afraid that if others find out, your reputation will be ruined? The words of shock and anger came out of the crystal ball. The white-robed young man stared at the figure in the crystal ball, and suddenly laughed evilly, and then said somewhat nervously, as long as I can defeat Ji Fei, so what if my reputation is ruined? Ha ha! Dongfang Chen, you can't do this, the Dongfang family and the Beitang family are allies, you can't do this to me. The figure in the crystal ball suddenly panicked. Chapter 420. Dongfang Chen's hands began to emit bursts of black light, and a strange power was emitted from the crystal ball. The runes engraved on the crystal ball were completely stimulated, and began to emit a gloomy and terrifying aura. An evil power instantly enveloped the entire crystal ball. Obviously, Dongfang Chen was using a secret method of the devil Dao to refine the primordial spirit and nascent soul that was sealed by the god-devouring pearl. Roar. Dongfang Chen, I curse you to die a horrible death. Inside the crystal ball, there was a horrified and inconsolable voice. Waves of vast energy began to flow out like a stream of water, into Dongfang Chen's hands. Soon, his whole body was enveloped by the devastating light that surged out from the crystal ball, and the vast energy fluctuations were mighty in the depths of the cave. The crystal ball continuously emitted pure yuan qi, and bursts of powerful aura filled the air. The surrounding walls of the cave flashed with spiritual light. Those were the runes that Dongfang Chen had engraved in advance. He used the power of the runes to guide the qi of heaven and earth to seal the void, not allowing the aura in the cave to leak out. However, the movement of the primordial spirit and nascent soul that he had refined could not be completely isolated even with the runes he had engraved. In the end, there was still a trace of strange fluctuation coming out of the cave. However, the nearby area was sparsely populated, and it was late at night, so no one discovered that Dongfang Chen was refining the primordial spirit and nascent soul in the cave. In order to improve his cultivation, Dongfang Chen did not hesitate to fall into the devil Dao. Ji Yufei flew in the air for several hours, and he still felt that the yuan qi in his body was endless, and he did not feel tired at all. After his body had transformed, it was as if a treasure house had been opened, releasing a powerful force. For a martial artist, the body was like a treasure house. As the cultivation level increased, the treasures that had been sealed in the body would gradually be opened. For Ji Yufei, the transformation of his body allowed him to come into contact with a deeper level of the power of the body. All the bones in his body had become colorful, like a five-colored divine bone. In his flesh and blood, there was a five-colored divine light surging, as if every inch of his muscles was flashing with multicolored light. After the transformation, Ji Yufei's body was comparable to a divine weapon, and it was strong to an unimaginable level. The most important thing was that the improvement of his divine sense allowed him to come into contact with the origin of life, the soul. A purple flame brand was imprinted on his skull, hidden under his skin. The soul imprint was directly connected to the inner world. It was the bridge between the physical body and the inner world. As the inner world grew, Ji Yufei's divine sense would merge with the inner world. At that time, the inner world would be him, and he would be the inner world. However, Ji Yufei knew that the void controlling realm was not the limit of the transformation of the fleshly body. His fleshly body had merely experienced a transformation. He was looking forward to the next metamorphosis. However, the cultivation of a martial artist was extremely difficult. Wanting to metamorphose again was not an easy task. He still had a long way to go. Ji Yufei used the 8 desolation steps to temporarily shake off the group of troublesome old monsters behind him and appeared in a forest. There was no ice or cold here, and the surrounding area was the border between the northern lands and the central plains. After flying for a few hours, Ji Yufei had no idea how far he had traveled to the south. However, he was sure that he was far away from the north. The roars of beasts could be heard from time to time in the Primeval forest. Ji Yufei concealed his aura, and silently traversed through the forest. With his current cultivation, the snakes, insects, and rats in the forest were no longer a threat to him. With the strength of his body, there were no snakes, insects, rats, or rats that could bite through his skin. However, he was still very careful as he traversed through the forest. He did not want to make any noise, nor did he want to alarm the animals in the forest. This was because there were many powerful old monsters following behind him. However, when Ji Yufei passed through a dense forest and walked out of it, he was intercepted by someone. It was a woman dressed in an emerald green dress. She seemed to have blended in with the scenery around her. Her clothes fluttered in the wind, giving her an elegant and otherworldly appearance. She was like a fairy who was above the common populace and could fly away with the wind at any time. She stood on a patch of grass. Her fine black hair danced in the wind and her eyes were as clear as water. She looked at Ji Yufei with a faint smile on her almost perfect face. It must be said that this woman was extremely beautiful. At the very least, Ji Fei could not find a single flaw on her body. She seemed to be slightly better than all the women he knew. Little brother, I'm very curious as to why that group of old farts are chasing after you. Can you tell me? The woman's red lips parted, and her clear, bell-like voice rang out in the open space outside the dense forest. It's you. Ji Fei was shocked. He had already recognized the fairy-like woman who had intercepted him. This woman was the master of the three-eyed purple martin, a powerhouse of the demon clan. To be more precise, this woman was not a human, but a demon. Moreover, she was a terrifying demon who had cultivated to the point of being able to transform into a human. Little brother, you seem to be very familiar with the powerhouse of my clan. Can you introduce me to that powerhouse? The woman looked to be in her 20s and did not seem much older than Ji Fei. However, Ji Fei did not dare to be careless. Although this beautiful woman looked very young, who knew if she was even older than the old monsters who were chasing after him? In the world of cultivation, a cultivator's appearance did not mean anything. Ji Fei looked at the woman and said calmly, the people who were chasing after me were the seniors of my sect. I didn't want to go back with them, so I ran away. Ji Fei said casually. He would not reveal the reason why the old monsters were chasing after him. Who knew if this woman was also after the longevity grass? As for my brother, he went after that little monk. If you want to get to know him, I can certainly introduce him to you. Ji Fei thought for a moment before replying. His words could be said to be watertight. The woman from the demon race couldn't help but frown when she heard his answer. Then, she suddenly smiled and said, Little brother, do you want to completely get rid of those old farts behind you? Ji Fei was not bewitched by this woman's peerless appearance. He maintained his vigilance against this woman. Before he knew what she wanted to do, he would not say anything. Hee. Of course I want to get rid of those seniors behind me. Do you have any ideas? Ji Fei looked at the woman in front of him with interest and asked with a smile. This is simple. As long as you temporarily go to my demon race as a guest, no one will be able to find you. The woman said. Yes. After saying so much, I still haven't asked for your name. Can you tell me? Ji Fei said. In his heart, he wondered what kind of background this fairy-like woman from the demon race had. Ji Fei did not immediately agree to the woman's invitation. Go to the demon race as a guest. Wouldn't that be like entering a demon nest? Just the thought of it made Ji Fei's scalp go numb. He was very clear that if he really went to the demon race as a guest, it would not be easy for him to come out. My name is Yang Wu Shuang, you must remember that. Hee. The woman from the demon race covered her cherry lips with her hand and said with a smile. She had an otherworldly aura, but her words were filled with charm. Ji Fei felt his heart palpitating as he had the urge to pull this girl named Yang Wushuang into his embrace and take good care of her. I am Ji Fei. Ji Fei directly said his name. In fact, he knew that this woman definitely knew his background. Otherwise, she would not have intercepted him here. This Yang Wushuang would not have the time to come to this barren mountain to enjoy the scenery in the middle of the night. So your name is Ji Fei. Come with me, little brother Ji. Yang Wushuang said as she walked towards Ji Fei. Suddenly, a purple shadow flickered. A small purple martin the size of a fist scuttled out from the bushes and jumped onto Yang Wushuang's shoulder. Where to? Ji Fei pretended to be confused. He did not want to go to the demon race as a guest with Yang Wushuang. Her motive was definitely not simple. One had to know that Yang Wushuang was a greater demon that could transform. This kind of greater demon was comparable to a peerless expert of the void controlling realm. It was extremely terrifying. A greater demon that could transform would most likely be a demon king in the demon race. What? Are you not willing? Yang Wushuang continued to walk towards Ji Fei step by step. Although her words were gentle, a gust of air appeared out of nowhere and swept across the dense forest. Ji Fei's expression gradually turned solemn. His eyes lit up like cold stars. He could sense a dangerous aura from the other party's body. At this moment, a sharp air-piercing sound came from the distance. Then, a golden sword light, like a golden bolt of lightning, illuminated the night sky and rapidly approached Jiyu Fei and Yang Wushuang. The surrounding temperature seemed to drop rapidly as the cold sword qi arrived. Old monster Shen Yuan. Jiyu Fei could not help but reveal a strange expression when he felt the familiar fluctuation of sword qi. This old monster of the Guangqing immortal sect was too difficult to deal with. Yang Wushuang had already stopped when the sword light appeared. She raised her head and looked at the sword light in the sky. She did not expect old monster Shen Yuan to arrive so quickly. Swoosh! The dazzling golden sword light fell from the sky like a meteor. The extremely sharp sword qi immediately spread out in all directions. Swoosh! As the sword qi shot out, the flowers and grass within a 6-meter radius were instantly sliced into countless pieces by the sword qi, scattering on the ground. The dazzling sword light disappeared in an instant, and a young man in white appeared from within it. This young man was the old monster of the Guangqing immortal sect, old monster Shen Yuan. Although his lifespan was coming to an end, his appearance had not changed. He looked like a young man in his 20s. However, his hair was completely white, tied behind his head with a simple ribbon. Chapter 421. Yang Wushuang of the Demon Clan. Just like her name suggested, her beauty was absolutely unparalleled. However, she was not just a pretty vase, but a powerful great demon clan. Only a grand demon could transform into a human. This kind of grand demon was strong enough to fight against a peerless expert of the void-controlling realm. For such an expert of the demon race to suddenly appear in a desolate mountain at night and intercept Jiyu Fei, it was obvious that the matter was not as simple as it seemed. However, Jiyu Fei did not know why the demon clan was interested in him. Could it be that the demon clan was also interested in the longevity grass? However, just as Yang Wushuang was about to invite Jiyu Fei away, old monster Shen Yuan of the Guangqing celestial sect rushed down from the sky on a sword light. The chilly sword qi immediately spread out in the open space outside the forest. The surrounding temperature dropped rapidly due to the impact of the sword qi. Jiyu Fei only felt a chilly qi attacking his body, as if a divine weapon was pressed against his neck. The pure and powerful sword qi from old monster Shen Yuan caused Yang Wushuang's expression to change. She thought to herself, the Guangqing celestial sword cultivator is indeed worthy of his reputation. Old monster Shen Yuan did not conceal his aura at all. There seemed to be golden threads circling his body. This was a sign that he had cultivated his sword principle to an extremely high level, and his sword qi had turned into threads. Although the Dao sect has formed an alliance with the demon clan, I hope you will not interfere in the Dao sect's internal affairs. Old monster Shen Yuan naturally knew that this demon clan woman's cultivation was not weak, and he did not want to cause unnecessary trouble. Demons who could cultivate to become grand demons and transform into human were not simple. In fact, what really worried old monster Shen Yuan was that this woman seemed to have a special relationship with the demon lord Huanglong. When the ancient devil broke out of the seal, this woman appeared on the 5-colored divine bird. Please don't misunderstand. I just saw that brother Jiyu Fei seems to be familiar with the almighty of my clan, so I want to invite him to the demon clan as a guest. Yang Wushuang said with a smile. Oh! Old freak Shen Yuan naturally didn't believe Yang Wushuang's words, so he said, then you can leave. Jiyu Fei definitely won't go to the demon race as a guest now. After finally catching up with Jiyu Fei, how could old monster Shen Yuan let the cooked duck fly away? Jiyu Fei could not leave. He had to get the longevity grass. The elders of the 3 great Daoist societies who were nearing the end of their lifespans wanted to extend their lifespans. Even eccentric Shen Yuan was no exception. How do you know that he's not willing to be a guest of the demon clan? If he is willing to go and you try to stop him, then you won't be giving our demon race any face, Yang Wushuang said. Although she still had a smile on her face, her tone was cold. Humph. The hands of the demon race have stretched too far. It's better not to meddle in things that you shouldn't meddle in, old monster Shen Yuan said with a serious expression. Although the Dao sects and the demon race had formed an alliance due to various reasons, the relationship between them was not as harmonious as it seemed on the surface. The experts of the 2 great sects still clashed with each other from time to time. After saying that, old monster Shen Yuan took a step forward. The sword qi exuding from his body became even stronger. His white hair fluttered even though there was no wind. His entire body seemed to have turned into an unsheathed heavenly sword. After old monster Shenyuan arrived, Ji Yufei did not say anything. He looked at Yang Wushuang and then at old monster Shenyuan, watching the scene with interest. In order to find out the situation of the expert of my clan, I have no choice but to ask brother Ji Yufei to go. As far as I know, brother Ji Yufei is not a disciple of the Guangqing Celestial sect, so you don't have the right to stop brother Ji Yufei from leaving, Yang Wushuang said without backing down. Humph. If that's the case, let's see who's the real deal. Old monster Xuanyuan's eyes suddenly emitted two brilliant rays of divine light. He glanced at Yang Wushuang and spoke with his actions. Kai. Kai. The two rays of divine light shot out from old monster Xuanyuan's body, pierced through the void, making a slight air-piercing sound. They were like two divine swords, shooting toward Yang Wushuang. When he had cultivated the way of the sword celestial to such a level, his entire body had become a sword. Every part of his body could emit an unparalleled sword qi. The cultivation world was a place where strength spoke louder. Yang Wushuang and old monster Shenyuan both knew that their opponents would not let them take Ji Yufei away easily, so they had no choice but to fight. The one with the higher cultivation and stronger strength would be able to take Ji Yufei away. Let's fight. Hee. I'll go with whoever wins. Maybe I'll give the longevity grass to the winner if I'm in a good mood. Ji Yufei retreated calmly and then leaped onto the top of the tree. Old monster Shenyuan and Yang Wushuang were startled when they heard about the longevity grass, and their eyes lit up. Yang Wushuang gently waved her jade-like hands, shattering the two fierce rays of divine light. Then, she grabbed at old monster Shenyuan with her right hand. Kai. 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 5 brilliant rays of light shot out from her fingertips, piercing through the void like 5 divine spears, and piercing toward old monster Xuanyuan's abdomen. The abdomen was a cultivator's weak point. It was where the dantian of the Purple Mansion was located, so it was extremely important. If the dantian was pierced, the cultivator would be severely injured. Humph. Old monster Shenyuan sneered. An extremely powerful wave of sword qi was suddenly emitted from the dantian of the Purple Mansion. Then, a golden sword ray shot out from his abdomen, instantly shattering the 5 rays of finger radiance that had pierced through his abdomen. Then, the golden sword ray shot toward Yang Wushuang. The sword ray was like a dragon, illuminating the heaven and earth and splitting the void. Wherever the sword ray passed, transparent ripples that were visible to the naked eye spread out. The power of the sword shook the heaven and earth, causing the void to vibrate. Yang Wushuang shouted and leaped into the air like a fairy. Then, she flicked her fingers as if she was playing a lute. Rays of finger radiance shot out and bombarded the golden sword ray that was chasing after her. Ding, 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 the sound of metal striking rang out. The golden sword ray was continuously shaken by the finger radiance, but it was still flying toward Yang Wushuang in the sky. At this moment, the three-eyed purple marten, who had been lying on Yang Wushuang's shoulder, was so shocked that it had burrowed into the spirit beast pouch on Yang Wushuang's waist. Heavenly monster slaughters gods, reverse the universe. Yang Wushuang shouted in a low voice. She waved her hands, and a vast amount of medicinal power surged out from her hands. It formed a vortex in front of her, and it flew toward the sword ray that was coming at her. One sword to destroy all techniques. Old monster Shenyuan did not dare to be careless. He shouted and pointed at the flying sword in his hand. The golden sword ray suddenly shone brightly, and it suddenly grew to 10 feet long, emitting an even more powerful and fierce sword qi fluctuation. Swoosh! The 10 feet long sword ray fiercely slashed into the vortex in front of Yang Wushuang, and the sound of cloth being cut open was heard in the void. One sword to destroy all techniques. Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? Yang Wushuang said disdainfully. Then, the vortex in front of her, which was formed from endless medicinal power, emitted a terrifying energy fluctuation. The space within the vortex seemed to have been reversed, and it became turbulent. Even the void was distorted. Yang Wushuang wanted to use force to take away old monster Xuanyuan's flying sword. The 10-feet-long sword ray was unable to break through the turbulent vortex, but it was not an easy task for Yang Wushuang to take away old monster Xuanyuan's flying sword. The two forces fiercely collided in the air and cancelled each other out. The sword ray, which emitted an unparalleled sword chi, tried to break through the vortex of demonic power, but the vortex of demonic power tried to devour the flying sword. For a moment, Yang Wushuang and old monster Shenyuan were in a stalemate, and no one was able to gain the upper hand. Just then, a few more powerful auras came from the north. Needless to say, the people from the three great Dao sects had finally caught up. Ji Yufei's expression changed when he sensed those auras. Then, without thinking, he shot up into the sky and used the 8 desolation steps to fly toward the south. "You guys take your time. I'm not going to keep you company." Ji Yufei's voice came from afar. Old monster Shenyuan and Yang Wushuang were in a stalemate, and they didn't dare to be careless or distracted. Otherwise, they would be seriously injured. They couldn't divert their attention to stop Ji Yufei. They could only watch helplessly as Ji Yufei disappeared in front of them. Old monster Shenyuan and Yang Wushuang couldn't help but be angry. If it weren't for the other party's interference, they would have already taken away Ji Yufei. At this time, the two of them were really angry. Boom! With a loud explosion, the demonic power vortex in front of Yang Wushuang shattered, and the powerful force directly sent her flying hundreds of feet away. Old monster Xuanyuan's flying sword was also sent flying, and its light dimmed. A vast and terrifying force swept out in all directions. The flowers and trees within a radius of dozens of feet were instantly torn to pieces by the destructive force, and the mighty aftershock shook the earth. Whoosh! Yang Wushuang shot up into the sky, no longer paying attention to old monster Shenyuan, and directly turned into a dark green light, chasing in the direction where Ji Yufei had disappeared. Preposterous! Old monster Shenyuan cursed inwardly, and then he called back his flying sword. Then, he merged with his sword, turned into a sword light, and shot up into the sky, chasing after Yang Wushuang. Ji Yufei must not fall into the hands of the demon clan. After Ji Yufei, old monster Shenyuan, and the others left, several rays of light cut through the void like meteors, flying above the place where old monster Shenyuan and Yang Wushuang had just fought. Chapter 422. The first rays of the morning sun shone in the boundless ancient forest. The roars of beasts and the chirps of birds echoed throughout the forest. It was a lively morning. The fog in the ancient primitive forest had not completely dissipated. As far as the eye could see, it extended to the dark green sky. Clouds and smoke floated in the air. A large river, like a white ribbon, separated this piece of dark green. It was a river, a large river. The river was more than a dozen miles wide. The sound of the surging river could be heard from far away. There was a white figure sitting cross-legged on a large rock by the river. The water splashed against the rock, but the splashes were only half a foot away from the figure. However, the splashes didn't reach the figure's body. His black hair casually draped over his shoulders and back. His eyes were closed as if he was listening to the sounds of nature and feeling the pulse of the world. He sat on the large rock by the river motionlessly like a stone statue. A stone statue without any aura. There was not even a trace of life from his body. It was as if he had merged with nature and become a part of the world. If a successful cultivator saw this scene, they would definitely be moved. This was because the young man sitting on the large rock by the river had clearly entered the state of being one with the world. This state of cultivation couldn't be entered at any time. It could be said that the state of being one with the world would only appear when one had an epiphany. There were many cultivators in the world, but every cultivator only had one goal, and that was to pursue immortality. However, there were very few cultivators who could have an epiphany. Epiphany was a type of opportunity. It couldn't be forced, and it couldn't be forced. After a cultivator had an epiphany, their strength wouldn't increase by much. Only their mental state would increase. However, after a cultivator had an epiphany, they would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort in the future. The young man in white sat on the large rock by the river for a few hours. The sun rose from the east, illuminating the world and dispelling the last trace of darkness. From time to time, colorful butterflies or birds would fly by the young man in white. From time to time, small animals would come out of the grass by the river to drink water. These small animals did not seem to sense the existence of the white-clothed youth as they leisurely walked past the boulder that the white-clothed youth was sitting on. Suddenly, the sound of flapping wings could be heard. An emerald-green bird flew out from the forest beside the boulder and landed on the white-clothed youth's head. The white-clothed young man remained motionless. Not even his eyelashes moved. As for the bird that landed on his head, it did not seem to feel that there was something wrong with its landing. It fluttered a few times on the white-clothed young man's head before flying back into the forest. All of this was so harmonious. When the sun was high up in the sky, sunlight shone on the white-robed young man's body, making it seem as if his body was enveloped in a layer of hazy light. It was unknown when an old man wearing a daoist robe appeared outside the forest by the river. The old man was only 4 to 5 feet away from the white-robed youth. He was an old daoist with a very peculiar appearance. The right side of his face was full of flesh and was as rosy as a baby's, but the left side of his face was wrinkled and stuck to his cheekbones. At first glance, he simply looked like half of a skull covered in human skin. The right side of the old daoist's body was full of chi and blood and was full of vitality. On the other hand, the left side of his body was lifeless without a trace of vitality. Life and death, these two polar opposite forces, actually appeared on the same person at the same time. Furthermore, the fact that the person was not dead seemed to have maintained the two forces in a delicate state of balance. The old daoist was daoist priest Ku Rong, a peerless demigod in the Tao sect. Daoist priest Ku Rong cultivated the path of life and death. Half of his body was alive while the other half was dead, so he had broken the shackles of the world and became an undead body. Needless to say, even a demigod who had broken the shackles of life and death did not have a lifespan equal to that of the heavens. Immortality was not absolute. In this world, there were still a few people who could kill demigods. For example, the old tortoise and the young monk who walked out of Lord Buddha's tomb had the ability to kill demigods, let alone Ghost Emperor Fengju and the other ancient almighty beings. Even if those ancient almighty beings could survive hundreds of battles, some of them only had a remnant of their soul left and were not completely dead yet. They still possessed great divinity and power that could easily kill a peerless demigod. Daoist priest Ku Rong stood quietly by the river. He did not go forward to disturb the young man in white who was sitting cross-legged on the big rock. His murky eyes sparkled from time to time. I didn't expect a genius to appear on Green Spirit Peak. After taking a deep look at the young man in white, daoist priest Ku Rong turned around and walked into the forest. Following that, a dense forest about half a mile away from the river collapsed in an instant. The flowers, plants, and trees within a radius of several thousand meters turned into dust and disappeared from the world. It was very sudden, but everything happened in an instant. An empty space was opened up in the dense forest, and daoist priest Ku Rong was standing at the center of it. Following that, daoist Ku Rong began to draw runes on the ground as if he was going to set up a formation. The mysterious runes were extraordinary. Each of the runes was flickering with spiritual lights and emitted waves of energy fluctuations. About an hour later, the ground within a radius of several thousand meters was covered with countless runes of various sizes. The runes seemed messy, but they seemed to have formed a force, which could also be considered an unpredictable force field. Whoosh! When daoist priest Ku Rong drew the last stroke, countless runes on the ground within a radius of several thousand meters lit up at once. Following that, the heaven and earth spiritual chi gathered from all directions and merged into the runes. The formation formed by countless runes was activated. The void at the center of the formation was like a transparent water wave, ripples visible to the naked eye, and the void was distorting. Daoist priest Ku Rong seemed to be satisfied. He nodded and turned to walk toward the river. At noon, Jiu Fei finally awoke from the mysterious martial realm. He had finally shaken off old monster Shen Yuan, Yang Wushuang, and the others, and entered the boundless forest. Following that, he sat with his legs crossed on a huge boulder beside a river. He initially wanted to comprehend the great Tao brand that the mysterious middle-aged man had branded in his heart, but to his surprise, he managed to comprehend it at that moment. The Great Dao Brand was a martial Dao rune that was produced when one reached the peak of the martial path. The person who was able to leave the Great Dao rune behind had most likely reached the supreme martial progenitor realm. Currently, Ji Yufei was still unable to comprehend it because he was not qualified to do so. He was too weak. However, even if he could not comprehend the Great Dao rune, just sensing the martial Dao rune was enough for Ji Yufei to enter a state of enlightenment where he was one with the heaven and man. Ji Yufei felt like a long time had passed, but it also felt like he had only closed his eyes to rest for a while. He seemed to have understood a lot of things, and he felt like he was enlightened. The problems that he had encountered in his cultivation seemed to have been easily solved. It was a magical feeling that made Ji Yufei feel like it was unreal. He opened his eyes and rose from the boulder. At that moment, he felt that his realm had completely stabilized. After the enlightenment, he was truly a void-defending realm martial artist. The Green Spirit Peak's lineage might be able to shine in your hand. Suddenly, a voice was heard coming from the side. Ji Yufei was taken aback, and all the hairs on his body stood on end. He turned around abruptly and looked in the direction of the voice. He saw a Daoist standing at the edge of the forest less than 15 feet away from him, smiling at him. "You're..." When Ji Yufei saw the Daoist, he was stunned. He had seen this person before. When the ancient fire god's divine palace appeared, this Daoist controlled the altar and fought endlessly with the other demigods and demigods. Once someone saw Daoist Kurong's signature look, they would never be able to forget it for the rest of their lives because his appearance was too peculiar. This Daoist was able to control the sect's altar, so he seemed to be a member of the sect. In just an instant, Ji Yufei had thought of many things. He had vaguely guessed that this strange Daoist might have a deep relationship with the Taishen sect. "I'm Daoist Kurong from the Taishen sect," Daoist Kurong said with a smile. His smile made Ji Yufei's hair stand on end. He saw that the right side of his face was smiling brightly, but the left side of his face looked like a half-skull. "Daoist Kurong? I've never heard of him," Ji Yufei thought to himself, but he still bowed to Daoist Kurong and said, "I'm Green Spirit Peak's disciple, Ji Yufei." "Greetings, Patriarch." Daoist Kurong was a peerless demigod who had broken through the hidden latch of life and death. It was not difficult to imagine that his seniority was probably much higher than that of the sect leader, Daoist Shentian, so Ji Yufei dared not slight him. Daoist Kurong laughed and said to Ji Yufei, "Why don't you follow me back to the Taishen sect now?" "Yes." Ji Yufei did not hesitate at all. Even if he did not want to return to the Taishen sect, it was no longer up to him. In front of a peerless demigod, he knew that he was probably not much stronger than an ant. Although there was only a big realm difference between the void-controlling realm and the demigod realm, the two could not be compared at all. A peerless demigod could kill a group of peerless void-controlling realm experts with just a wave of their hands. Ji Yufei followed behind Daoist Kurong and walked through the dense forest. Soon, they arrived in front of the formation that Daoist Kurong had previously set up. Ji Yufei was very surprised to see the formation. He could see that it was definitely set up by Daoist Kurong on the spot. Chapter 423. Daoist Kurong used his Dao power to carve an abstruse formation on the ground within a radius of several thousand feet. The runes could condense the world's essence and form a terrifying aura that could distort the void when Daoist Kurong poured his Dao power into them. Could it be? Ji Yufei vaguely thought of a possibility, but this idea was too outrageous. The Taishen sect was definitely thousands of miles away from this endless forest. This place was still within the northern Wei Empire's territory. According to Ji Yufei's speculation, this endless forest should be between the north and the central plains. Just as Daoist Kurong was about to step into the formation, he suddenly stopped and looked at the forest on the right. "Who's there? Show yourself." As Daoist Kurong spoke, he had already pressed his right hand forward in the air. A large hand instantly condensed in front of his palm. It was as big as a small mountain and emitted a terrifying energy fluctuation. It pressed straight toward the forest on the right. Rumble, the mountain-sized palm shook heaven and earth. An endless power surged in front of the hand, causing the forest to collapse and the ground to tremble. Following that, A cry of surprise was heard from the forest. Then, a green figure rushed out of the forest. Someone was really spying on them. Ji Yufei could not help but feel shocked. Even though his cultivation base had broken through to the void controlling realm, he was still weak. He could not sense that someone was lurking nearby. The figure had a slender figure and seemed to be a woman. She was shrouded by a dark green demonic cloud. She looked up into the sky and flew toward the north. A demon? Daoist Kurong seemed a little surprised. He did not attack again and let the person leave. The person rode on a demonic cloud and disappeared into the distance after a few flashes. Ji Yufei did not see the person's appearance clearly, but he could vaguely guess who it was. Apart from the people from the three great Dao sects, Yang Wushuang was also following him. It seems to be his daughter, Daoist Kurong murmured as he looked in the direction where the demonic aura disappeared. He seemed to have figured out the person's origin. Daoist Kurong no longer hesitated. He led Ji Yufei into the formation and used his Dao power to completely guide the formation's power. Daoist Kurong and Ji Yufei stood at the center of the formation, where the runes on the ground within several thousand feet of them emitted a dazzling spiritual light. A vast energy was condensing. Ji Yufei could see the space around him distorting. He could no longer see the scenery outside. At this time, he already knew that this was a teleportation array. A peerless demigod had all sorts of abilities that were hard to fathom. He was actually able to set up a teleportation formation at the last minute. This really surprised Ji Yufei. Swoosh! A burst of intense light burst out. The light was as bright as the sun, piercing Ji Yufei's eyes and causing him to close them. Following that, Ji Yufei felt the world spin around him, as if the world had been reversed in that instant. He felt as if he had nowhere to exert his strength, as if he was floating in the air, unable to touch anything. Ji Yufei also felt dizzy. It was as if a huge rock was pressing on his chest, and his lungs felt like it was difficult to breathe. It was very uncomfortable. Fortunately, this situation did not last for long. After about half an hour, Ji Yufei felt his body tremble, and his feet seemed to have landed on the ground. It feels so good to have my feet on the ground, Ji Yufei thought to himself. He finally opened his eyes. The strong light outside made his eyes uncomfortable, but he quickly adapted to it. Nevertheless, he quickly got used to it. He looked around and saw that he and Daoist Kurong were standing on an altar with ancient runes carved on the ground. Ji Yufei saw that the mysterious runes, which were emitting bright spiritual light, were quickly dimming. Soon, they became dim. Where is this? Ji Yufei thought to himself. Have we already returned to the Taishen sect? It was not like he had never been transported thousands of miles by a teleportation array before. Back in the southern wilderness, Ji Yufei and a group of people from the Taishen sect had been transported to an important place in the 100,000 mountains. They had experienced something like this. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Just as Ji Yufei was feeling bewildered, rays of light suddenly appeared in the distant sky. Each ray of light emitted a heavy fluctuation of magical power. 18 rays of light. 18 peerless masters. Ji Yufei was secretly shocked. The number of peerless masters who had suddenly appeared was even greater than the masters from the three great Daoist sects who had been tracking him. The ancient altar was built in a valley. The valley was not large, but it was filled with flowers and lush vegetation. The scenery was not bad. They are here. Daoist Kurong seemed to have known that something like this would happen. He was not surprised at all, and he still stood on the altar calmly. Who are they? Ji Yufei thought to himself. 18 peerless masters was an extremely powerful force. In the world of cultivation, they would definitely be a superpower. The 18 rays of light flew from all directions like 18 divine rainbows. Even during the day, when the sun shone on the world, they were still dazzling. Soon, the 18 rays of light flew over the valley one after another and landed directly in front of the altar. These 18 peerless masters did not seem to dare to land directly on the altar. When the person in the lead appeared from the rays of light, Ji Yufei already knew who he was. The person in the lead was a Daoist with a sage-like demeanor. Ji Yufei was very familiar with this Daoist. This Daoist was the leader of the Taishen sect, Daoist Shentian. Behind Daoist Shentian stood 17 men and women. Among these 17 people, there was a white-haired old man, a middle-aged Daoist with a dignified appearance, and a young woman and a young man. Ji Fei realized that among these 17 people, there were heads of the other 7 branches of the 9 Taishen pulses. Apart from the heads of each branch, he did not know the others. He had never even seen them before. Greetings, Patriarch Kurong. Daoist Shentian led a group of Taishen sect cultivators and bowed respectfully to Daoist Kurong, who was standing on the altar. Daoist Kurong was a peerless demigod. He had already broken through the hidden latch of life and death and was on the road to immortality. No one knew how long he had lived. In the Taishen sect, there was probably no one who had a higher seniority than him. With a peerless demigod in charge, it was no wonder that the Taishen sect had been able to survive in the world of cultivation. Although the Taishen sect had experienced several crises where they were almost destroyed, they were still safe. All right. Daoist Kurong nodded, then walked out of the formation eye in the center of the altar and walked straight down the altar. Ji Fei hurriedly followed Daoist Kurong down the altar. There was a solemn atmosphere in the quiet valley. Daoist Shentian and the others did not even dare to breathe loudly in front of Daoist Kurong. They were extremely respectful. I've brought him back, but I want to accept him as an unofficial disciple, Daoist Kurong said as he arrived in front of everyone. Daoist Shentian and the others could not help but be stunned. They never thought that Daoist Kurong would want to accept Ji Fei as an unofficial disciple, which surprised them. Patriarch, this. Daoist Shentian wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. The expressions of the others also became a little strange. If Daoist Shentian accepted Ji Fei as an unofficial disciple, wouldn't Daoist Shentian also become Ji Fei's junior? Heh. Do you have any objections? Daoist Kurong uttered coldly and released a powerful and oppressive aura. The aura pressured Daoist Shentian and the other peerless powerhouses to the point that they felt suffocated. Daoist Kurong was like an unreachable ancient sacred mountain. The powerful aura that he released made everyone's hearts palpitate. Patriarch Kurong wants to accept me as an unofficial disciple? Ji Fei was also dumbfounded by Daoist Kurong's words, and his mind went blank at once. I dare not. I'll listen to your orders, Patriarch, Daoist Shentian said fearfully. The first seats and the elders behind him quickly nodded in agreement. Ji Fei, are you willing to be my unofficial disciple? Daoist Kurong asked Ji Fei with a barely noticeable flash of light in his muddy eyes. What? Be his disciple? If I cultivate his cultivation technique, won't I become like him too? Although Ji Fei was very unwilling, he could not refuse at the moment. It might not be a bad thing for him to have Daoist Kurong as his backer. At the very least, nobody in the sect would dare to harm him. With a peerless demigod-level figure as his master, anyone who wanted to harm Ji Fei would have scruples. After all, nobody was willing to offend a demigod. I'm willing. Ji Fei agreed without thinking too much about it. Haha. Great, great, great. Daoist Kurong seemed to be very happy. He then added, I'm not a martial artist, but I've collected many martial artists' weapons over the past hundreds and thousands of years. I'll give this heavenly fault sword to you. Following that, Daoist Kurong took out an ancient sword from the storage bag on his waist. Ji Fei reached out to receive the ancient sword respectfully, but he was wondering why Daoist Kurong wanted to accept him as an unofficial disciple. No matter how he looked at it, it seemed like Daoist Kurong had planned this a long time ago. Is there something fishy about this? Ji Fei could not understand why Daoist Kurong would do this. Although he had his suspicions, he did not show it on the surface. Congratulations, Patriarch. Daoist Shentian and the others hurriedly congratulated him with smiles on their faces. It seemed like they were happy that Daoist Kurong had accepted an excellent disciple. However, among the 18 peerless powerhouses from the Taishen sect, including Daoist Shentian, not many of them were truly happy about this matter. Chapter 424. Clang. When Ji Fei unsheathed the sword, the sound of the sword was clear and melodious like a dragon's roar. However, The half of the sword that was unsheathed was dull, and it seemed to be a blunt sword without a sharp edge. Good sword. Daoist Shentian, the chiefs, and the elders in the sect could not help but cheer. When the heavenly fault sword was unsheathed, a simple and unadorned aura immediately filled the air. It didn't show off its sharpness, nor did it emit any chilling sword chi. However, everyone could feel an imposing and heavy aura from the heavenly fault sword. The ancient sword was blunt, and it was precisely because there was no dazzling cold light or sharp sword chi that the heavenly fault sword was extraordinary. The gazes of Daoist Shentian and the elders were very sharp. As soon as the ancient sword was unsheathed, they knew that it was a rare weapon. A martial artist's weapon? Ji Yufei thought to himself. Although the ancient sword was also a rare ancient weapon, there was a huge difference between it and the divine weapon's essence that was fused into his chi and blood. Ji Yufei returned the sword to its sheath and bowed to Daoist Kurong. "Thank you, Master, for the sword. Good, good, good. Cultivate well in the sect. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask Shentian and the others." Daoist Kurong helped Ji Yufei up with a smile. Upon hearing that, Ji Yufei could not help but think that this cheap master just wanted to establish a master-disciple relationship with him in name only. Yes, Ji Yufei replied, but he wondered why Daoist Kurong did this. Ji Yufei really could not understand why Daoist Kurong would do this, and what exactly did Daoist Kurong want from him? This made Ji Yufei a little uneasy. Not only Ji Yufei, but Daoist Shentian and the other higher-ups of the Taishen sect also did not know why Daoist Kurong suddenly wanted to accept Ji Yufei as a registered disciple. "All right, I'll be returning to the innumerable mountains," Daoist Kurong said. "Goodbye, Master. Farewell, Patriarch." Ji Yufei, Daoist Shentian, and the others quickly bowed at him. Daoist Kurong's wrinkled face revealed a rare smile that was 100 times uglier than crying. Even if Daoist Kurong did not smile, he still looked very strange. When he smiled, he gave off a somewhat frightening and evil feeling. Swoosh! Daoist Kurong did not seem to want to stay any longer. He leaped onto the ancient altar and activated the transportation formation on it. A bright light flashed, and he vanished from the altar. Ji Yufei threw the heavenly fault sword in his hand into his storage bag, then stood in front of Taoist Shentian and the other higher-ups of the Taishen sect, not knowing what to do. Daoist Shentian and the other elders also had a somewhat strange expression on their faces. Ji Yufei had been accepted as a registered disciple by Daoist Kurong, so in terms of seniority, Ji Yufei could be said to be the elder of this group of old monsters in front of them. Daoist Shentian wanted to say something but stopped. He did not know how to address Ji Yufei. Should he call Ji Yufei Grand Master or something? Even the 17 elders behind him did not know what to do for a moment, let alone Daoist Shentian. Uncle Ji Yufei, please come to the Taishen temple. We have something to discuss with you. Daoist Shentian hesitated again and again, but in the end, he still called Ji Yufei Uncle Master. The sect master was indeed someone who knew when to yield and when to stand tall. The group of elders behind Daoist Shentian could not help but give Daoist Shentian a thumbs up. The way he addressed Ji Yufei as Uncle Master was earth-shattering, and the elders behind him were full of admiration. Calling a junior, especially the youngest junior in the sect, Uncle Master required extraordinary courage and boldness. It was absolutely impossible to call him Uncle Master. "Sect Master, please don't call me that. Just call me by my name." Ji Yufei hurriedly waved his hands and retreated to the side. Although Ji Yufei was only a registered disciple of Daoist Kurong, Daoist Shentian did not dare to slight him and still insisted on calling Ji Yufei Uncle Master. Ji Yufei saw that Daoist Shentian insisted, but there was nothing he could do. Thus, the group of people rose into the sky and flew out of this quiet and secluded valley. This valley was actually a forbidden area of the Taishen sect in Taishen Mountain. Usually, this valley was strictly forbidden for the disciples of the sect to enter. The ancient altar in the valley was a treasure of the Taishen sect, and there were masters guarding the valley. After Ji Yufei rushed out of the valley and flew high in the sky, he could clearly see the surrounding terrain. He found that he was still in the territory of Taishen Mountain. This valley seemed to be less than 100 miles away from Taishan Peak, the main peak of the 9 peaks of Taishan. At this time, Ji Yufei no longer doubted that he had really been brought back to the Taishan sect by his cheap master. The teleportation matrix that Daoist Kurong had carved could transport people thousands of miles. It was really incredible, and it shocked Ji Yufei. Demigods really did have unfathomable means. 19 beams of light appeared on Taishan Mountain, and it immediately alarmed the countless disciples of the Taishan sect who were cultivating on the 9 peaks of Taishan. They all came out of their cultivation places and looked at the scene in the sky in shock. Soon, Ji Yufei, Daoist Shentian, and the others came to the back of the Taishan temple, where Daoist Shentian cultivated. Daoist Shentian invited Ji Yufei to sit down. After all the elders of the sect had sat down, Daoist Shentian could not wait to ask about the longevity grass. All the elders also looked at Ji Yufei, waiting for him to answer. Daoist Qi and the other 4 or 5 elders, who were nearing the end of their lifespans, had their cloudy eyes become extremely bright at this time. They pricked up their ears to listen to Ji Yufei's answer. Ji Yufei did not want to take out the longevity grass immediately because he did not want Daoist Shentian and the others to know that he had an inner world. This was his big secret. The inner world could be said to be Ji Yufei's trump card. He could not let people know about it easily, especially when he was not strong enough. Therefore, Ji Yufei put the blame on the innocent old tortoise. He said that the longevity grass was in the hands of the old tortoise, but if he wanted it back, he could contact the old tortoise and get the longevity grass back. Daoist Shentian and the other elders did not doubt Ji Yufei's words. After all, in the north, they saw Ji Yufei with their own eyes with a powerful figure of the demon clan. It seemed that the relationship between Ji Yufei and that powerful figure of the demon clan was not ordinary. Daoist Shentian and the other elders actually knew about some of the old ghosts' origins, so Minister Dan had already told the higher-ups of the school everything that happened in the virtual sky world in detail, no matter how big or small. They knew that the old tortoise was a character in the virtual sky world, and his cultivation was extremely powerful. He controlled the legendary inner world and was a terrifying existence that surpassed demigods. If the longevity grass was in the hands of a powerful figure of the demon clan, even Daoist Kurong would not be able to get it back. Fortunately, Ji Yufei seemed to be able to get the longevity grass back from the old tortoise, which made the elders who were worried finally feel relieved. After Ji Yufei promised to contact the old tortoise as soon as possible and get the longevity grass back, Daoist Shentian continued to ask Ji Yufei about his experiences in and out of the virtual sky world before letting him go back to Green Spirit Peak. Chapter 425. At dusk, Ji Yufei left the Taishan sect. He rose into the air and flew toward Green Spirit Peak, which was hundreds of miles away. At this time, apart from the upper echelons of the Taishan sect, the other disciples of the sect did not know that Ji Yufei had returned to the Taishan sect. After Ji Yufei left, Daoist Shentian and the heads and elders of the sect talked for half an hour before they left. Daoist Shentian and the heads and elders of the various branches had unanimously decided to temporarily block the news of Ji Yufei's return to the Taishan sect. They also closed the mountain gate and did not allow the disciples of the sect to leave the mountain at will. They did not want the people of the Shongqing sect and the Guangqing Immortal sect to know that Ji Yufei had returned to the Taishan sect. Otherwise, the people of the Shongqing sect and the Guangqing Immortal sect would definitely come looking for them. However, Daoist Shentian and the others also knew that the news of Ji Yufei's return to the Taishan sect could not be blocked for long. The people of the Shongqing sect and the Guangqing Immortal sect would come looking for them sooner or later. Although the 3 major sects were on the same side, everyone knew that each of the 3 major sects had planted spies in the other sects. This kind of thing was already considered a semi-open secret among the 3 major sects. However, the 3 major sects turned a blind eye to this phenomenon and did not pay attention to it. Ji Yufei did not have any secret method to contact the old turtle. He was actually stalling for time. He could not directly open his inner world, take out the longevity grass, and give it to Daoist Shentian, Daoist Qi, and the others. He could not expose all his secrets, even if these people were the elders of the sect, or even the sect leader, Daoist Shentian. After Ji Yufei left the mountain and experienced all kinds of things, he was no longer the Ji Yufei of the past who only focused on advancing bravely. The world of cultivation was a cruel world where the strong preyed on the weak. Only when you had great strength would others admire you, envy you, and fear you. Only then would you be able to get what you wanted. Before possessing absolute power, it was best not to show off too much. One had to learn to conceal one's strength and bide one's time. One had to learn to play the pig to eat the tiger. Among the disciples of Taishan sect, not many people noticed the escape light rushing out of Taishan Peak. This was because the escape light coming and going from Taishan Peak appeared from time to time, and everyone was used to seeing it. Ji Yufei flew in the air. He didn't fly directly to Green Spirit Peak, but landed in front of the bamboo forest at the foot of the mountain. The Green Spirit Peak seemed to be the same as before. It did not change because of Ji Yufei's departure. The bamboo forest at the foot of the mountain was dyed golden by the setting sun. Ji Yufei stood outside the bamboo forest and smelled the fragrance of bamboo leaves. This was the scent of nature, and it was also a scent that he was very familiar with. I'm finally back. Ji Yufei looked at the familiar bamboo forest in front of him and murmured. He really couldn't describe his current feelings. The Green Spirit Peak of Taishan sect now only had one successor, Ji Yufei. It could be said that this spiritual peak was actually a lonely peak with no one. Ji Yufei walked into the bamboo forest, and there was a rustling sound under his feet. The bamboo path was covered with thick leaves, and when people walked on it, it was as if they were stepping on soft soil. Obviously, this path through the bamboo forest to the top of the mountain had not been used for a long time. Ji Yufei was not in a hurry to return to the cave on the mountain, because there was actually nothing in the cave, and there would be no one waiting for him there. Ji Yufei, who cultivated ancient martial arts, walked the path of becoming a saint with his physical body, and proved the way with his strength. He did not need the magic treasures of cultivators. The magic treasures, elixirs, and cultivation methods that Green Spirit Peak had accumulated over the generations were actually quite a lot. However, ever since one of the ancestral masters of Green Spirit Peak obtained an ancient martial arts manual, the disciples of Green Spirit Peak began to cultivate that ancient book, and from cultivation to immortality, they embarked on the path of martial arts. Within the 9 divisions of Taishan, Green Spirit Peak was an oddity. They wanted to prove the way with martial arts and become a saint with their physical body. Gradually, there were fewer and fewer cultivators in the Green Spirit Peak. The Daoist scriptures and the Daoist magic treasures refined by the predecessors were all sealed away. For Ji Yufei, he had no use for those sealed magic treasures, ancient books, and even elixirs, but other cultivators coveted these things. Coupled with Ji Yufei's departure, there was no one to guard the cave, and it was hard to guarantee that no one would have designs on the sealed magic treasures and elixirs in the cave. Ji Yufei was not in a hurry. He continued to stroll through the bamboo forest, and walked up the almost unrecognizable path up the mountain, unhurriedly. He did not use the 8 desolate steps, but instead walked up the mountain step by step. He did not display any power, just like an ordinary person climbing the mountain. Even so, after an hour, Ji Yufei still arrived at the cave on the mountain. However, when he saw the heavy stone door that was opened, his expression immediately became extremely ugly. Ji Yufei stopped in his tracks. He could vaguely hear a faint voice coming from behind the opened stone door. There were actually outsiders in his cave mansion. Furthermore, there was more than one person in the cave mansion. Preposterous. Ji Yufei was infuriated. He strode forward, but just when he was about to enter the cave, a voice rang in his ears. Ha ha! I didn't think that there would be so many good things in Ji Yufei's cave. If I had known earlier, I would have broken into his cave earlier and taken away all the treasures in the cave. A hearty laughter came from the cave. When Ji Yufei heard this voice, he immediately stopped and hid by the door. He was very familiar with this voice. The person who had just spoken was someone he knew, someone he could not be more familiar with. Wang Yuanji, you're really audacious. You actually broke into my abode and stole my things while I was away. You really deserve to die. Ji Yufei was infuriated. Wang Yuanji was really going too far. Heh, who says it isn't? However, It's a pity that with our current strength, we can only break some simple seals and obtain some small items. It's hard to break the seals and obtain the real treasures. Another voice rang out. There seemed to be a hint of helplessness in it. Qi Hao. The other voice was also very familiar to Ji Yufei. The owner of the voice was a disciple of an aristocratic family called Qi Hao. This Qi Hao, like Wang Yuanji, was also a disciple of an aristocratic family and entered the Taishan sect. It could be said that they were birds of a feather. Neither of them were good people. However, the cultivation family Qi seemed to have some relationship with the royal family of the Qi kingdom. The surname Qi was the surname of the Qi kingdom. The king also had the surname Qi, and Qi Hao's background seemed to be not small. The bad habits of the disciples of aristocratic families were well displayed by Wang Yuanji and Qi Hao. They were all people who bullied the kind and feared the evil, but they were also incomparably arrogant. Especially Wang Yuanji. He was narrow-minded, treacherous, and cunning, yet he'd seized the opportunity when Ji Yufei wasn't present to actually break open the door to the Emerald Spirit Peak abode with Qi Hao with the intention of plundering it. However, it was a pity that the things passed down in the Green Spirit Peak had all been sealed by the ancestors. It was not so easy for them to take away. The cultivation of those two guys is only at the first or second heaven of the mortal ascension realm. Even with one finger, I can crush them to death. Ji Yufei felt the aura of the two guys in the cave and thought disdainfully. He was about to go in and teach those two guys a lesson. However, at this time, Wang Yuanji's words made Ji Yufei temporarily give up on this idea. I have already secretly informed my granduncle. He has already arrived outside the Taishan mountain. When it is dark, I will secretly bring my granduncle up the mountain. At that time, won't I be able to take whatever I have? Ha ha. Wang Yuanji laughed unscrupulously. Wang Yuanji's granduncle? A cold smile appeared on Ji Yufei's face. Since they dared to sneak into the Taishan sect, there was no need to go back. A sharp light flashed in Ji Yufei's eyes. He wanted to teach Wang Yuanji, and even the Wang family, an unforgettable lesson. No way. If someone finds out, it will be terrible. Qi Hao was obviously shocked and exclaimed. He could not believe that Wang Yuanji dared to do this. Won't it be fine as long as no one finds out? Wang Yuanji seemed to be indifferent, but he also knew that if this matter was known, not only would he be in trouble, but the Wang family might also be affected. How can a timid person achieve great things? If my granduncle can really break the seal and obtain the treasure, the strength of the Wang family will definitely increase, Wang Yuanji said coldly. But Qi Hao still wanted to say more. All right, this matter is between you and me. If a third person finds out, you will be the one to ask. If everything goes well, there will be benefits for you. Wang Yuanji said so. He seemed to be determined to obtain the treasure of the Green Spirit Peak, and he was also very confident in the strength of his granduncle. In the past, the Green Spirit Peak was incomparably powerful, and its strength was not weaker than any of the other 8 branches of the Supreme Mystery Sect. If they obtained the treasure of the Green Spirit Peak, it was not difficult to imagine that after a few decades, the Wang family would definitely become strong. If Ji Yufei had not returned in time, Wang Yuanji's plot might have succeeded, because the experts of the Supreme Mystery Sect had already come out in full force. However, Ji Yufei had returned and happened to hear Wang Yuanji's grand plan. Therefore, Wang Yuanji's grand plan was destined to be difficult to succeed. There was a moment of silence in the cave. Wang Yuanji and Qi Hao did not speak again. After a while, there was the sound of extremely light footsteps coming from the cave. Ji Yufei quickly retreated and quickly walked into a forest next to the cave. Just as Ji Yufei hid himself, he saw 2 figures walking out of the cave. The young man in front was Wang Yuanji, and Qi Hao followed behind Wang Yuanji. They were all from cultivation families, and they were all disciples of cultivation families. However, the strength of the Wang family that Wang Yuanji belonged to seemed to be much stronger than the Qi family. Among the disciples of the families that had entered the Supreme Mystery Sect, Dongfang Chen of the Dongfang family and Wang Yuanji of the Wang family were the leaders. Dongfang Chen was not on the mountain, so Wang Yuanji became the leader of the group of disciples on the mountain. Ji Yufei saw that after the two of them came out of the cave, Qi Hao, who was walking behind Wang Yuanji, turned around and closed the two thick stone doors. He then caught up with Wang Yuanji and walked down the mountain together. Wang Yuanji and Qi Hao probably never would have thought that their conversation had all fallen into Ji Yufei's ears. Humph. The things of my green spirit peak are not that easy to take. Ji Yufei was hidden in the forest, coldly watching Wang Yuanji and Qi Hao's figures disappear on the mountain path, and then muttered.